Mike Little, Mayor of the District of North Vancouver, and the pleasure falls to me to welcome you all here to our regular meeting of council for Monday, June 19th at 7 o'clock. Councillor Murray, wondering if you would start the meeting off with a land acknowledgement, please.
Thank you, Mayor Little. We respectfully acknowledge the original peoples of these lands and waters, specifically the Tsleil-Waututh, Squamish, and Musqueam, on whose unceded ancestral lands the District of North Vancouver is located. We value the opportunity to learn, share, and serve our community on these unceded lands.
Thank you very much. Council, we have an agenda that's been circulated. Are there any errors or omissions from the agenda as presented? Hearing none, moved by Councillor Forbes. Is there a seconder on the matter? Moved by Councillor Back. I'll call the question. All in favor? Contrary minded? Motion carries. Council, we have one set of meeting minutes that have been circulated with the package. This is from May 15th, regular meeting of council. Are there any errors or omissions from that meeting as presented? Hearing none, will somebody please move adoption of the meeting minutes? Moved by Councillor Murray, second by Councillor Forbes. I'll call the question. All in favor? Contrary minded? Motion carries. Okay. Well, thank you very much. So, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the meeting. What happens next is we have a period of up to 30 minutes at the front end of every regular meeting of council for input from the public on issues of concern. People are permitted to speak for up to 3 minutes each. And we start with a sign-up sheet that's prepared in advance of people contacting the clerk's department. And I do have a list for that. But if we get to the end of that list and we still have time, then we can add speakers from the floor or from our virtual setup here. And I should say this meeting is being run in a hybrid fashion, which means all members of council, the staff, and public can participate in this meeting through the Zoom link that's on our website. As you can see here, all members of council this evening are participating in person. Okay, so at this point, I'm going to go to the first speaker on the list, which is Bev Parslow, followed by Peter Coles. So Bev Parslow can come up to the microphone. Welcome. You have 3 minutes to address the council.
Thank you. First of all, I'd like to thank Mr. Cohen for the discussion last week. I realize that budgets, personnel, and public requests puts the district in a difficult position. At the 2020 DCA meeting, the group was presented with a visionary document on what could be done on Delbrook. This included improvements, especially at the intersections. Even prior to that, there was a meeting with the district on the topic of improving safety on our road. I was hoping that the document would be the basis for safety improvements. Sadly, this was not the case. Perhaps that document could be given to members of council. Engineering should be thanked for their initial work on Delbrook. The flashing beacons do help, but the crosswalks are still dangerous. I would personally invite members of council to accompany me to try and cross the road at Windsor. Requests for a better RCMP intervention has resulted in the grand total of 26 speeding tickets on Delbrook in the entire year, when we have in fact 800 vehicles a day going over 65. I would suggest that engineering is the solution to this problem and not the law. A design for a bump out would not appear to me to be a complicated process, but it was promised in 2020, twice promised in 2021, promised again in this very room last May that it would be finished in 2022. And finally, I had a letter recently stating that it could be or maybe not be this year. Then, I have now been told that it would be finished by the end of August. I would suggest that there's an enormous gap between promises and actual achievements. I'm surprised that the district can state that arterial roads are not eligible for traffic calming. Could the district explain to the 95% of people living on Delbrook that complained of speeding that they cannot expect a safe road as they are on an arterial road? Perhaps we need a change in the legislation. The May 16th meeting, 2022, of the workshop was not ratified by council, even though it was promised to be brought back, as there were many questions raised by many people on the table. As far as I'm aware, it disappeared into the ether of the district hall. Interesting to note that vehicle speeds were not part of that process. Looking at the comparison of vehicle speeds, I find several interesting points. It is interesting to note that the numbers for Delbrook were given at the 4,000 block at the top of the hill and not the bottom 3,400. The figures that I have would indicate that we are much more seriously affected than the table given to you. Prior to the 2020 meeting, there was a meeting at District Hall on the topic of Delbrook. We talked about enhanced pedestrian items, pedestrian refuges, bike lanes. Can I just have another?
If you can just wrap up, that would be great.
I'll
Thank you,
wrap
Ben.
up as quickly as I can. Delineator posts, improvements at intersections, speed radar boards, road narrowing, and lighting levels at the crosswalk. That to me was a vision. That was a vision. To conclude, I'd hope there would be energy, vision, and the birth of a process to enhance safety for all pedestrians from council. I find none of these. Well, we will get 2 speed boards, which are welcome. But there is a difference between traffic safety and traffic calming. We need more emphasis on traffic calming. Please start a plan and begin to implement the vision. There's a realization it will take time, but please begin the process. Delbrook is not unique. We are in need of traffic calming throughout the district.
Thank you very much, Bev.
Thank you very much indeed.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Next speaker I have is Peter Coles, followed by Mike Tancredi. Mr. Coles, welcome. You have 3 minutes to address the council.
Peter Coles, 1030 East 29th Street. Mayor and Council, on behalf of my family and many neighbors, we are asking that you support the installation of parking pockets on East 29th Street as recommended by district staff. The addition of parking pockets will preserve the cycling lanes while providing mobility access, especially for those with mobility impairments. Just recently, there was a heated exchange between a cyclist and a delivery driver as the driver was blocking part of the cycling lane as he had no other options to stop. Parking pockets will eliminate this kind of confrontation. The parking pockets will also address the issue of the district not plowing lanes during snow events by giving those of us that rely on the lane to access our parking spots a viable option. The only other comment I have are the concrete islands required. By eliminating these, it would allow for better access for handy dart buses and reduce the cost of the parking pockets. I'll leave that decision to district transportation staff. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Peter Coles. Next speaker I have is Mike Tancredi, followed by Stephanie Wilson. Is Mike joining us in person? Maybe, but if other people come up and put their hand up after you, then they'll be after you. So if you don't want to speak right now, I'll keep going through the list if you'd like. Yeah, we
had a party of 3 and we were all we had registered for that as well.
okay. So Stephanie Wilson here to speak to. Welcome. Yeah. Welcome. You have 3 minutes to address the council.
Hi, thank you for having me. I'm here to speak about the anti-2S LGBT+ overpass rallies in North Vancouver. And I want to start by recognizing councillors Black and Pope, who have spoken publicly about the absurdity about these of these rallies in North Vancouver. Thank you for sharing your voices. I know that the overpass situation is complicated. Highway infrastructure falls under the jurisdiction of the Ministry of Transportation, who sought an injunction on May 11th against protests on the Mountain Highway overpass. The Mountain Highway overpass has not stopped, and since then there have been 2 protests on the Keith Road overpass. North Vancouver RCMP have failed to enforce the Mountain Highway overpass injunction for over a month now. I have been on the overpass to observe rallies, and I have witnessed North Vancouver RCMP counseling rally participants to evade the terms of the injunction. Fundamentally, the RCMP's failures endanger this community. On Thursday, an anti-SOGI banner fell off the Keith Road overpass into rush hour traffic on Highway 1. It was retrieved, and RCMP simply told the group to hang it on the other side of the overpass. While on the Mountain Highway overpass, I have observed rally participants stand in vehicle lanes, hold signs over railings and into overpass traffic, engage with drivers by yelling into open vehicle windows, and engage with cyclists and pedestrians on the road level. This is unsafe and unacceptable. But what is most harmful is the hate that queer and trans residents are forced to endure every Thursday. And it is a hate movement. There is no pornography in school libraries. Teaching kids that queer and trans people exist won't magically turn them gay. What we are seeing is disinformation employed in a coordinated far-right attempt to scare people into hate, to scare people into supporting the erosion of 2S LGBTQ+ rights. This is discrimination against queer and trans people. These people just aren't on the overpass. One organizer, Christopher, litters North Vancouver with transphobic graffiti. Recently, he dragged a ladder to Lonsdale Quay in the middle of the night, and he cut down the Progress Pride flag. He went to a regular Freedom Convoy party a few days later in Abbotsford, and he burned the Pride flag in a bonfire. He is at the overpass every Thursday and has been for months. Sexual orientation and gender identity are protected by provincial and federal legislation. Governments and institutions are obligated to step in and act when human rights are threatened. I understand that standing against hate puts a target on councillors and mayors. I've seen what's happened with Mayor Buchanan when she spoke out against the hate and transphobia in the city of North Vancouver. But 2S LGBTQ+ people themselves are the ones who bear the full, sorry, I'm just wrapping up.
That's okay.
But 2S LGBTQ+ people are the ones who bear the full intensity of the far-right hate and organizing. The District of North Vancouver must do more to protect the human rights of 2S LGBTQ+ North Vancouverites. The Canadian Human Rights Act and the BC Human Rights Code are supposed to protect people from discrimination. It's 2023, and we cannot go back to a time where people are forced to hide their true identities just to get through the day safely. I hope that the District of North Vancouver can be loud in their support of the 2S LGBTQ+ community, because I know how much people are hurting, and I know how upset this situation is making people. And I implore this council to do more to protect the human rights of everyone who lives here. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for your comments, Stephanie. I will say, very well said today. I think you can count the council among allies that this is not okay. It's not acceptable in our community. It's not something we support. We have been in constant communication with the Ministry of Transportation to try to address how they can improve their response. Pointing out again, though, the injunction was not about the content. The injunction was about the safety aspects. And so the injunction that they got from the court was very much about that one piece of infrastructure. And it was obviously very easily avoidable by moving to the next one on the highway. We have encouraged the Ministry of Transportation and Infrastructure to expand that ban to all of the bridges on the North Shore. And at this point, the response that we got from them today was that at this time, they have no plans to expand the injunction.
Am I allowed to make a comment?
Well, I'll just finish my comment. So RCMP have determined that at this point, those specific signs do not meet the threshold for hate speech, and they do not feel that they have the ability to act in that. And so we were using the injunction on Mountain Highway to be able to remove things, but RCMP says they don't feel that they're authorized to remove them off the other pieces of infrastructure. We've encouraged the provincial government to expand it. We will continue to advocate to get that off of our public spaces, both for content and for safety risk to the public, of signs falling off potentially onto roads on the highway. But again, it's the ability to act is within the Ministry of Transportation and Infrastructure's sphere. And I would highly encourage anyone who feels that they want to support this cause to communicate with the provincial government to the MOTI and say the same things we have, which is that they need to expand it to all bridges in the region. And that seems to be the only teeth that we actually have to make a change. So.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
I would just like to add to that, if I could, please. Indeed, there is a lot more that the District of North Van could be doing. We can be standing up, speaking out, and saying that this is not okay in our community. It's not good enough to just speak internally or to the ministry. We need to show leadership on this. We need to have the pride flag out there for the month of June, not just the week. And we need to send the message very clearly and strongly to this community that you are safe here, that we welcome you, that, that we are a community that embraces diversity and inclusion.
Thank you very much, Councillor Pope. And so at this point, we don't have any further speakers signed up, but we still do have about 15 more minutes. Would anybody else like to address me? Yes, I see 1, 2. Is there a third over there? 1, 2, 3 right there. Why don't we have the 3 come up next? That's fine.
Presentation, is that just go?
Yes, if you put the USB stick into the thing there, it should pop up on the desktop. I think it's out in front of you. Yeah, there you go.
And I hope it's not.
Oh, right there, yeah, okay.
Is it PowerPoint or video?
It is PowerPoint.
Yes, it's
Okay,
PowerPoint.
PowerPoint's good.
Okay.
PowerPoint should work.
Video, we have some trouble.
Okay.
Great, thanks, guys.
They'll both be on.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
Do I got to share the screen here or something, or?
I'll bring it up in just a second.
How do I start this?
There should be like a.
There you go. So if you can make it full screen, there you go.
Yeah, sorry. Slideshow from beginning. There we go.
Yeah.
Are we good whenever?
Welcome. You have 3 minutes to address the council.
Sweet. Thank you very much. Good evening, Mayor and Council. I'd like to start off by thanking you guys all for having us here today. My name is Evan Tancredi, and I'm a sponsored and competitive skateboarder that grew up on the North Shore. Today, I'm speaking on behalf of a large and diverse community, that community being the skateboarders of the North Shore, also known as Sons. Basically, we created this group because our community's beloved skateboard park, Lonsdale Skateboard Park, just near the highway, was torn down and ripped away from our hands last year in spring. This was mine and all of my friends' second home and place to get away when we were growing up. To say this place shaped me into the human and skateboarder I am today would be basically an understatement. It allowed me to get away from everything at home or everything else that was going on in my life. And it was a great outlet for my mental and physical health, as well as lots of my buddies. So when the skate park was ripped away, our community was displaced brutally, and we don't really have a place to call home. Next slide, please. Thanks. So skateboarding knows no boundaries. There is no discrimination of age, ethnicity, sex, skill level, whatever it may be. It welcomes everyone. Over the years, sorry, I lost my train of thought here. When I first started skateboarding, I had friends as young as 4, which is pictured on the left there, my buddy Tyo, and friends as old as 50, which is pictured right in the middle with the helmet. That's my buddy Scotty, who's actually here with us today. And he started skateboarding at the young age of 50, and he's still skateboarding nearly 10 years later, and I'm still friends with all the people in that picture. So skateboarding was one of the places that I always felt comfortable, and a place that I felt I could actually express myself. This is the norm for almost all of us. So we created Sons basically to represent all those people justly and give the generations to come somewhere to call home and do what they love. Our goal is to make a great place better. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
And I'll pass it on to my brother here.
Actually,
Or sorry, to John, my bad.
Next speaker, welcome. You have 3 minutes to address the council. And if we could start with your name.
Thank you, council members. My name is John Lundgren. I'm a 52-year-old skateboarder. I grew up in Kelowna, where I started skateboarding in 1978. I've lived in the Lower Mainland since 1993, and in the Blue Ridge neighborhood of North Vancouver since 2009, where I'm raising a family with 2 middle school age boys. I've been skateboarding long enough that I've seen it go through several cycles of increasing and decreasing popularity. And I can tell you this, these cycles are directly related to the availability of terrain. North Vancouver is renowned for having the foresight in 1978 to build one of the first public use skate parks on the planet at Sealand Park. And this model has spread throughout the world. However, our city has fallen behind other cities in terms of modern skate park terrain. Victoria, BC, for example, has opened 2 new parks in the past year alone that feature cutting-edge skate park design. Skateboarding itself has evolved in giant leaps since parks like Kirkstone were built, and our skate park terrain has not kept up with this pace. We want North Vancouver to regain its former status as a bucket list skate park destination. Some council members may not be aware that skateboarding is now an Olympic sport. Men and women from 12 years old to 50 years old competed at the 2021 Tokyo Olympics in 2 different disciplines known as street and park. It was truly a showcase of the international appeal of skateboarding, but in particular, it put skateboarding culture on display for the world. Skateboarding culture is unique and it is a model of diversity. Age, gender, cultural background, etc., are irrelevant at the skate park. Skaters of all skill levels support each other and help each other learn and progress. Many marginalized groups that are shunned by traditional organized sports, or perhaps they're simply unable to afford to participate in them, feel at home in the skateboarding community. It is one of our goals to support these different communities. For example, North Vancouver is home to Spectrum Skateboard Society that provides skateboarding lessons and camps for kids on the autism spectrum. They often have to hold their camps outside of North Vancouver because we don't have the facilities to support them. Other groups that can be found at skate parks throughout the Lower Mainland are the Nation's Skate Youth, which is a nonprofit community for Indigenous youth, Real Hot Skate Moms, and the Late Bloomers Skate Club, which are all ages, all skill level communities. Personally speaking, I have noticed that the culture and environment that exists at skate parks at this moment is truly the best it has ever been. I can show up at any skate park and instead of feeling like a washed up old geezer, I'm just one of the crew. I'll offer tips, I'll cheer on a beginner that's just learning to drop in, I'll crack jokes with other veteran skaters like Scotty over here, and I'll get tips from skaters 30 years younger than me on a new trick that I'm trying to learn. So this is the kind of community that I think deserves support, and it suggests to me that there's no better time than now to provide modern, up-to-date skateboarding facilities to make a great place better.
Thank you very much. And next speaker.
I'm up next here, Mr. PowerPoint extraordinaire.
Fantastic. Welcome. You have 3 minutes to address the council.
Thank you, council and mayor. My name is Mike Tancredi, brother of Evan Tancredi and co-founder of the Skaters of the North Shore. And we're here tonight just to sort of break the ice with you all and establish a relationship with our community, which is thousands of people across the North Shore, spanning from the Glen Eagles Skate Park all the way to Parkgate Community Center, which is sort of the breadth of the skate facilities there. Our slogan is to making great places better. And we see that applying in the following ways. So going forward, we'd love to see a improvement to the existing facilities, the well-loved facilities, some dating back to the 1970s, with endeavors such as resurfacing, seating areas, better year-round lighting, and potentially the pursuit of partial or full coverings for these civic spaces to get the, I'll just go back one more, to get the use that they deserve. This photo was taken just prior to the demolition of the Lonsdale Skate Park last spring. And this is a small portion of people that were able to make it up. You can see from that there is a large and vibrant demand for these types of spaces across the North Shore from all different demographics. And going forward, we'd like to nurture, protect, and encourage the development of these spaces to make a richer experience for all residents of the North Shore, including those people that don't actually ride a skateboard. This could be parents, brothers, sisters, friends, allies. And we dream of using unused or forgotten spaces potentially for these purposes. And tonight, we just really wanted to introduce ourselves and the community that we represent and put a face to the name. And thank you for your time.
Thank you very much.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Can I ask a question here?
Actually, for public input, no. Public input, it's they're providing their input for us. It's not an opportunity for council to ask.
Okay, can I make a
questions,
comment
so,
then?
That's not our policy for council input.
Before, I don't know if that matters, but we did. No.
For public input for the 30 minutes, it's for the public to
We'll-
come
we'll
in and
send
raise
you
their
an
issues.
email if you'd like.
Any member of council can follow up with the group and set up a meeting and go and explore. And I mean, I was so glad that you raised the issue of 1978. Dirk Ustindi was our parks manager at the time. He went down to California, saw what they were doing,
That's right.
came back and said, we've got to do that in our parks. And I believe Delbrook, well, Sealand was first and then Delbrook and Griffin. And so they did bring that back for us. So
I think we have one more speaker. He's gonna be real quick. Cannon just wants to say something.
Cannon is welcome to speak. You have 3 minutes to address the council.
Hi, my name is Cannon Lang. I'm 12 years old. I used to skateboard at Lonsdale Skate Park. Since the destruction of it, I skate at Parkgate. The facility are getting old and the ground is getting rough and it could hurt to fall on. Anything you could do to help would be greatly appreciated.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I think we've got 4 skateboards sitting out front of our house right now, and Parkgate's their normal place, but there's drainage issues and you have to keep them up. But thank you very much for your comments. I've got enough time for another speaker. I believe we have a virtual hand up. Is that correct? Which, sir? Next, I've got a virtual speaker had raised their hand. And so Hazen Colbert, if we can move Hazen Colbert over as a speaker.
And then we have an opportunity at the agenda item if anybody wants to speak in an agenda item.
Only for signups ahead of time, but yes.
But tonight maybe we'll.
Hazen Colbert, can you hear me? It's showing that you're muted on the system. Hazen Colbert, can you hear me? We're obviously having some technical issues there. Mr. Colbert, you are marked as muted within Zoom. Can you hear me?
See if I can unmute him here. Oh, yeah.
Oh, Mr. Colbert, I see you're now unmuted. Can you hear me?
I can, Mr. Mayor Little. I would just appreciate when I say to James Gordon that he unmute me, that he unmute me. This is becoming very tiresome. I know he doesn't like me, but when I say unmute me, this is not a request with a bunch of flowers. It means unmute me. So now we're done with that. I want to say
be clear, Mr. Colbert, when
I
it's-
don't need to hear
Yeah.
any instructions. Please let me finish my public input. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Sorry, we can't hear you when it is muted. So we didn't hear your request to unmute. We were actually repeating that. We want you to be able to speak. So
Thank
Mr.
you.
Colbert, welcome. You have 3 minutes to address the council.
Thank you. I address the council and I do so with respect to the concerns that were raised earlier tonight by Stephanie Wilson. Stephanie, you don't know me. I am a cis male, but I am also gay and queer. I am very well aware that the last thing in the world that Municipal Hall wants to do is support LGBTQ rights, with the exception of 3 people: Mayor Little and Councillors Jordan Back and Catherine Pope. Those 3 are our allies. The others would wish we would go to hell. That is the reality. I've been through it.
So
can you listen? Can you just stop and let me finish? I've been through it. What I want to say is, Stephanie, if you really want some help, reach out to me and I'll be there on Thursday morning. I'm 6'4", weigh 250 pounds, and been trained on the use of force continuum. If anybody decides that they want to inflict damage on the LGBTQ community, I will be there to caution them. If the RCMP is not willing to act, I'll act. We can't have this continue. The excuses made that, oh, the injunction only applies to one location are ridiculous. I have a great deal of experience in law. The claim that injunctions apply to one location is simply not true. Okay? What I'm asking is for the silliness to stop. Okay? I get it that the District of North Vancouver does not want to violate a court order. I, on the other hand, have absolutely no concerns about violating a court order. And I'm sure that the District of North Vancouver knows that. So stop allowing these incredibly homophobic people to inflict intentional emotional damage on very sensitive, good people like Stephanie. Please bring that to an end. We don't want to see conflict, because if we continue to ignore this matter, there's going to be conflict. I don't want the conflict. I don't want to see it happen, but I will not sit back and see innocent people harmed. Am I clear?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Colbert, for your comments.
Thank you.
Okay. I think we have time for one more. Yes, come on up. Welcome. You have 3 minutes to address the council.
Thank you, Mayor and Council, for taking this last-minute edition. I'm Rene Gorley from 686 United Crescent, speaking tonight on the Delbrook matter, of course. I'm speaking on my own behalf, not on the Delbrook Community Association's behalf. Thank you to the engineering department for providing the plan, which was asked for a couple of months ago by this council. I would submit that the 4 pages are not actually a plan, so much as a reason why there isn't a plan. And I would also ask why the 65 kilometers per hour number is so important. In a what the presentation of the engineering department says is that we have a lot of roads where speeding is a real problem, where people are going 30% over the speed limit, where a lot of people are going 30% over the speed limit. And there's many people going much faster than 30% over the speed limit. So my request is you actually reject the report from engineering and ask them to go back, and maybe you expand the request, and let's have a holistic plan on what we're going to do about speeding across the district on all of the minor arterials. I'll point out that Highland is a minor arterial. It's the only other one on the list there that has houses on it, and indeed on the major arterials. But 65 is an arbitrary number, is 30% higher than the speed limit, and people shouldn't be going that fast on our small streets. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Renee, for your comments. Okay. At this point, we're going to move on with the agenda. What we have first here is we do have a delegation this evening. This delegation is going to be about Small Housing BC. So if the representatives from Small Housing BC want to come up and get prepared, just to describe the difference between a delegation and public input. So a delegation is an opportunity for nonprofit organizations in our community to come forward and speak for a period of up to 5 minutes about issues facing their organization. And then there's an opportunity for question and answer from the council after the fact as well. So it is a bit more of an enhanced opportunity for feedback. So absolutely welcome. You have 5 minutes to address the council.
Great. Will we see the PowerPoint presentation come up?
Is it on the machine or where is it? Yep. Is it on the desktop there?
Is it? Let's see. That was not that one. No. We were.
One in the top corner, is that us?
Oh, let me just see here. I might be that. Okay, perfect.
Good. There you go.
Great, thank you. Hi, my name is Akua Schatz, and thanks for the opportunity to speak to you today. I'm with Jake Fry, and we're both here from Small Housing BC. I also happen to be a resident of the District of North Vancouver.
Welcome.
Thank you. We're here to talk about coming changes to single detached housing zones. The BC government is introducing legislation that's going to permit up to 3 to 4 units per single detached lot, with more units on lots that are near transit locations. This coming legislation, it will see BC's housing approach align more so with other laws that have been introduced in places like California, Oregon, and Washington. Small Housing is excited about this change, and we're a nonprofit organization made up of planners, architects, and developers that have been advocating for this form of housing since 2012. We describe this kind of small infill housing on single detached lots as gentle density. So from coach houses through to sort of houseplexes, one can see from this slide that it can have the look and the feel of a single detached housing. What we know is that most British Columbians actually agree that this type of housing can help address affordability and create more attainable housing in neighborhoods across the province. In fact, we found that 1 in 5 owners on single detached lots in the province, not speculators or developers, would consider building in the next 5 years this type of housing form. But the reality is there are still extensive barriers. Even though the research shows that 20% would like to build on their lots, many face barriers to being able to do so. 2 things in particular: the uncertainty about how to finance such a project and the lack of clarity and process about the regulation that they would be following. To address these concerns, Small Housing is urging governments like yourselves to include 2 important tools to get the needed housing built. First of all, allow stratification of these lots as a tool to leverage the value that's embedded in them. Even though we know from available data that up to 1/3 of strata properties will ultimately become rental units and contribute to the housing stock, stratification provides the financial base to get the construction loans necessary and the housing built. We can expand on this further in questions. The second thing you need to do is to simplify the regulatory process. And so it should take no more than the process shouldn't be any more onerous than the process required to build a single detached house. The added or uncertain fees, engineering requirements, and local improvements have the potential to suppress the construction of this type of housing and add to longer delays in building these housing forms, which we know are deeply needed here in the District of North Vancouver. We would urge you as councillors to ensure that these 2 points are embedded in whatever local legislation you develop in response to the provincial changes, or even in advance of them, ideally. So how do we know that this is going to work? Well, we have examples from elsewhere in North America. We know that these work. In fact, these similar provisions have been a part of recently adopted laws in Washington, Oregon, and California. In the case of California, in the first 3 years alone, 53,500 permits were issued for gentle density developments. This is versus 500 permits that preceded the statewide law getting introduced. In the words of one observer, these laws in California and elsewhere triggered a boom in affordable housing at no cost to the taxpayer. Many people ask whether or not it's actually going to be affordable, and examples from the states actually demonstrate that it is. Again, using California, 66 to 80% of the new gentle density housing units that were built qualify as affordable to households earning the area median income. Here, as in California, we know the housing that these measures can deliver is the kind of affordable and stable housing that is needed by so many people in the District of North Vancouver. we'd encourage you, to take the leadership here. And this is a place where nonprofits like Small Housing BC can be supportive and assist you in your journey of exploring how to introduce policy that's going to get housing built.
Thank you very much. Looking to the council for any follow-up questions that you may have from the delegation. I'm happy to entertain moving receipt first to start that off. Somebody move receipt, moved by Councillor Back, second by Councillor Murray. Councillor Back, do you have any comments you'd like to make?
Sure. Thank you very much for your delegation, for your presentation. I really appreciate the advocacy work that you do. And, we want to look to add this kind of gentle density in our community. We already are in some ways. We've looked at our coach house policy a number of times, and we are seeing uptake, although it's been limited. And so I know that I would be open to more ideas from your side, and maybe some examples of other communities that are doing it well and are seeing success with this sort of these types of small housing. So if there's any opportunity to maybe organize a tour or something like that, I'd be open to anything like that.
We'd be very happy to organize a tour. We have hundreds of units that we could show you within the Lower Mainland, and that have quite an array of. I think fundamentally one of the nicest things about this is that any of the built forms that we're talking about, there are working examples that are in the communities right now and have been in the communities for a long-standing period of time and have fundamentally been an asset to those neighborhoods.
Great.
Very much. Councillor Murray, did you have additional comments?
Thank you. Thanks for your presentation. Have you compared California's assessment authority and British Columbia's assessment authority to look at the differences between the two, the regulations in California versus regulations up here? Could you provide that information to us?
We haven't compared the difference between them, but we do know that the province of British Columbia, which we've been in communications with, has been moving towards approaching this with a province-wide approach, similar to the way changes have been enacted in states in California, Oregon, and Washington. And I think the realization in those states, similar to what has happened here, is that you need actually a wider approach to housing, because you end up with a scattershot approach when you're dealing with a housing crisis. And so this is where a provincial approach becomes important, not only to create, to enable this form of housing, but also to create a number of supports that would otherwise be unavailable to districts and local governments of certain sizes. So this is what I think we can take as great examples of best practice from our neighbors to the south, where they've been able to create additional supports for local governments to catalyze housing and address the housing crisis in a much more meaningful way. Would you add anything to that, Jay?
I would just build on it. I think one of the key dynamics that do come up in these discussions and concerns tend to be around land speculation. And fundamentally, the gentle density programs that we're advocating for, and much that are coming from the province, really are hinged on the fact that, and it's quite a unique opportunity where this program actually mitigates that land speculation. The densities that are being discussed and promoted in these housing forms tend to really appeal to a homeowner who may be looking to get equity out of their property, facilitate family needs, or small groups of people coming together who can then afford, they can find some attainable housing ownership. But there's not those profit margins that bring a typical development company in, or even would mitigate the risk involved in someone acquiring a property to do a project to then sell it, expecting both a lift off the land and a realization of profit from a construction project. So this is where it's quite a unique opportunity we have for us across the province, especially in areas where we are seeing housing challenges, high rental programs, and this really an inaccessible spectrum of, or let me rephrase that, in inaccessibility of people who should be able to have a house, should be able to have ownership, should be able to have that security, it comes with that sort of secure tenure, are this unable to do that. And this is an opportunity we see at no cost to a municipal body in a significant way to be able to facilitate that change in the housing spectrum.
Thank you.
So, and I think that's all. I think certainly you're coming from a good place. But it would be, and we certainly need advocates like you to look at the challenges behind this place that we're in with this very unaffordable level of housing for anyone in this community or in the Lower Mainland. But it would be great if you could, help us to be able to understand the comparables that you're using, such as California. California's tax assessment system is based on what you bought your property for. So they tax you if you bought your house in 1965, whereas ours is quite different. It's based on an average of sales. So that's the kind of information that's not getting out, that the community doesn't really understand. And then the cost from municipality to municipality just in the Lower Mainland, cheaper to build in Surrey than it is to build on the side of a mountain with a creek running down a hill. And we would love to provide you with that so you could, engage with the province, because there is some speculation amongst, politicians within the region that supply and demand is not working. It hasn't been working for years.
And I press you to go to a question.
And it's the, so if you could look into that and then come back again and engage, I'd be happy to engage with you on these issues.
What exactly is your question, though? You would like us, what's your question for us?
You're
Is it
comparing
related
us to
the small
California.
housing?
So to look at if you're going to compare us to an American state with very different laws than we have and regulations, land costs and how land is assessed, I think it's an important part to look at, but I'd be happy to sit and talk to you
I
about it.
think the benefit probably then, what is great to look at is we have, so there's over 200 planners in our gentle density housing network, representing 50 communities across British Columbia. And those are 50 communities that are advancing gentle density policy solutions, all quite comparable with to issues that are being faced by the District of North Vancouver. Examples of exceptional uptake also on those bylaws and policy amendments. And so that might be something that we'd be happy to follow up with to demonstrate sort of the uptake that's taken place within the province of British Columbia, from places like Kimberley through to, Cumberland and Kelowna through to the city of Vancouver. I'll have really good examples of how to generate that type of uptake. Yeah.
Thank you. I've
You're
got
welcome.
Councillor Hanson, followed by Councillor Forbes. Councillor Hanson.
Yeah, thank you very much. Thank you very much for your presentation. I was intrigued by your suggestion that stratification is very important to the financing component of the proposal of gentle densification. And perhaps just for all of our education, could you expand a bit on what stratification would look like in the context of a single family lot with these different building forms on it?
Definitely. Would you like to go ahead
Sure,
first?
I'm
and I
happy to
can-
take that
yeah.
one. Fundamentally, you will have seen these sort of built forms with heritage protected properties that might have a coach house that have been strata titled. We certainly see that in the city of North Vancouver or Vancouver. Fundamentally, what you would see from the outside of bypasser would be a structure that would have 2 or 3 homes in it and potentially a rear house. There wouldn't necessarily be a lot of difference in the context of the visual dynamic as for a passerby. How the stratification works is that would be some modest common land, walkways and access, and then there will be a separate title for each unit. It's something that Van City's been contemplating a specialized product for as well at the same time. So this is going back to the root of the point of why we need that, is that it would be very challenging for a homeowner to raise the capital they would need to do that work. It might be upwards of $2 million to then look at that recovery for that investment strictly being from rent. On the opposite, the benefit you would get from those 3 or 4 units on that property actually being able to be held privately is that you would start to get attainable home ownership. So you start going to be able to provide housing for your teachers, firefighters, those individuals and their income level would be able to afford those units.
Yeah, I live
Thank
in
you.
a multi-generational household here in the district of North Vancouver. We created a multi-generational household by splitting up a single family home. But we had to, we were, there was a lot of challenges to us financially to be able to undertake that because my in-laws who are approaching in their 80s had to then be on the mortgage alongside us because there was no way to separate that out. I think we can all agree that these are the types of things we want to continue to encourage in our communities. And that was a significant barrier for us being able to undertake that. And that's just with an intact family. If you're looking to introduce that with 3 units on a lot, you really need to be able to enable the financing. The financing has to be a component of what will make this successful.
Thank you very much.
Councillor Forbes, your comments?
Thank you for your presentation. I'm checking off everything that I know that's in the District of North Vancouver, but you're saying all of these examples, you've seen them in the province?
Yes, those are just some of we didn't have a chance to put them all on there. So that's 8 out of several different configurations. Many of these, as Jake mentioned too, are examples that existed, pre-1950s. Houseplexes, this idea of a house with multiple units in it is something that was really commonplace, more so before the 1950s. This is a return to housing forms that existed in these locations previously.
I wanted to ask you, it would depend on the particular law, the bylaws in that particular municipality. But in general, if you see people looking at this kind of idea of gentle densification, is there any one that sort of pops up more often than another?
I think that we've yet to see what's going to, we know from our studies that we've done with independent research groups that there is a wide appetite for this across the province. I think it's going to be really down to that individual. And in many cases, really what fundamentally is, again, another keystone to why we feel this is going to be a very successful program is that there can be a diverse options for homeowners. And these are options for homeowners. They're not something that's necessarily a wide sweeping rezoning of an area where all of a sudden we're going to townhouses where we have single family. This is around the opportunities that a homeowner has to take advantage of something that the city through zoning is providing them for them to have a betterment for their family or their financial security. I would think in many cases, strata titling a coach house would be something that someone would consider quite readily because it has such a low financial barrier. And there are things that the township municipality could look at, such as restricting resale prices, which would enhance affordability in the long term. I mean, there are a number of options that can be looked at around creating and embedding some level of attainability in perpetuity too.
Well, we've been advocating, especially the laneway and coach houses, and we had a very slow uptick on it because it's so expensive.
Yeah, if that is a question, I'd like to answer it.
Sure.
I've actually built 3 coach houses here. It's a complicated process here and it's time consuming, and that's perhaps a bigger barrier than the cost.
So you think in your presentation, you're talking about making it simpler?
Yes.
Yes, if I could speak candidly, which I will, that's been the biggest hurdle for the clients that have come to us. I have a standalone company called Small Works, which builds laneway houses and coach houses, and that's been the biggest barrier in the district.
I just have one other question. My house happens to sit right in the middle of my lot, so I don't think I could possibly get any of these except maybe the basement suite in. But I like the gentle densification because that enables a neighborhood also to hang on to the neighborhood feel. And so I like this idea. Thank you.
You're welcome. And you could, what's interesting is you could have an attachment to your house. You could have a suite in the basement. There's all sorts of configurations that we can do to renovate or retrofit our existing homes to accommodate more households. And that are, because you're right, many people are in your similar situation where our policies have been designed to put homes in the smack dab of the center of the lot. But there are ways to creatively find ways to evolve that housing to encourage more people to join you.
I'd really like it if you put together something a little bit more comprehensive and brought it back. or submitted it to council so that we could take a look at all of it? Because I think this is exactly on target with where we're eventually going to be going and where we're trying to go.
Great.
Well, we'd love to be a resource as you move ahead as a community.
And we will be putting together design guidelines with actually build-ready examples for the fall, starting in the fall to be released in January. So these are things that, we can keep you abreast of all of these developments so that it helps so you don't have to be replicating the work.
Thank you, Councillor Forbes, for your comments. The next speaker I have is Councillor Pope, followed by Councillor Ma. Councillor Pope, go ahead.
Thanks very much for your presentation. I'm really keen on.
Okay, go ahead.
Thank you very much. I'm really keen on seeing a lot of this implemented in the district. And I know that our planning department is certainly working towards improving the processes, but can you possibly highlight a couple of areas in that process where the choke points are?
Well, I think there's a number of items, and to be honest, we haven't built here for a year and a half, having elected not to, just because we have other customer bases, and it's more timely to build in other areas. If I could be, again, quite frank, I think in somewhat answering Councillor Forbes too, another point is, and when looking at that expense of a coach house, the idea of being able to stratified all that, so a homeowner actually starts to provide housing at the same time, realizing something that would cover not only their costs, but actually perhaps help somebody who is looking at a fixed income have some more support in that. Those are the type of options we see. Specific to your question though, items where we have pre-approved plans or pre-approved approaches that where an application is expedited if it's providing affordability is an initiative we've looked at in some communities. But I think fundamentally it's really the assurity of a set time frame in which a permit would be issued. And for the risk analysis on the part of the municipality, the idea that they'll only be looking at a set of plans potentially could be a tool that would help staff be able to expedite processing and permitting.
Thank you. Councillor Ma.
Thank you for your presentation. I was just wondering, you're talking about, taking this across all the province and looking at design guidelines and trying to address some of the financial challenges. I'm curious to know if you've approached BC Housing, are they receptive to this at all?
So we've been working alongside the province of British Columbia. So Ministry of Housing, MOTI, Ministry of Transportation has also been involved in looking at the ways that they can support greater housing options, and Ministry of Municipal Affairs. There are a number of different ministries that have been leaning into this and looking more carefully at gentle density. And I think based on the announcements from the minister in early April, moving towards that province-wide initiative, that's definitely on their mind. That they're looking at that through BC Builds, or the standing up of an organization that would be specifically tasked with addressing not only affordable housing, but this idea of the missing middle. Whether or not that's going to be a part of BC Housing or not, I think is yet to be seen. And we have no more knowledge than any other person on that.
I could build on that too. The AHOP program through BC has been looked at, and there's been discussions on that. It's an interesting and it's something that would be, I think there's opportunities for growth. Currently, the AHOP program allows first-time homeowner support in the initial purchase. And it's the idea of riding the market with that homeowner or the new purchaser. On a personal level, it would be lovely to see entrenching that affordability long-term. But there have been some discussions, and I think this is the exciting part of this is that this is an evolving and meaningful part of new housing growth across the province.
We would love to see a lot more of that. We have done pro formas on gentle density housing and its ability to deliver below market units and affordable units in perpetuity. And we found that the sweet spot tends to be between 4 and 6 units on a lot. But you can actually you could have 4 of those units be market, and 1 of those units would be held in perpetuity below market value. And that actually increases over time, the affordability becomes even greater because it's held under a covenant. So there are really creative, interesting mechanisms that have to date only been applied in multi-unit residential buildings that have the potential to be nested in single-family neighborhoods. And I think there's an amazing opportunity for the district to be able to kind of pilot and lead some of those pieces.
Thank you, because I was just thinking, like, with the direction with the provincial government, looking at additional units and looking at how we move quickly. I think there's a good time now, and I would think that most municipalities would probably welcome working with groups like yourselves to say, hey, is there a way we can work together in meeting different objectives with these different forms of housing. So thank you for your presentation. And hopefully we can work together.
Great.
Everyone's been so positive and optimistic about it. I feel like I've got to kind of go out there and present some of the other points of view on it. So there's obviously a tension between potential loss of long-term rental opportunity when you go to stratification, and also the tension between urbanization of our communities and transit-oriented developments that are at relatively high densities versus gentle densification, as you say, in single-family neighborhoods. So multifamily development tends to be able to be done at a critical mass that attracts transit services, helps us upgrade our infrastructure, including sewer, water, and utilities, whereas we don't get that uplift on single family houses when they go to those higher levels because they don't actually contribute back to those other pools of money in the same way that that multifamily definitely does. And I totally take your point that there's probably some disincentives along the way. It's very expensive to build on the North Shore. Land prices, people expect to be able to get a high rental rate, but they tend to only go to the backyard house or laneway house when there's a family benefit, meaning the family's moving out of the main house into the coach house, and they're putting the main house back to other members of the family or some other such arrangement. And the net effect is that last year we approved 1,600 multifamily units. I think that in the end only about 8 units of this size went through, not including secondary suites. Secondary suites, I don't know the number on secondary suites. I'm talking about laneway houses and coach houses. And so for us, as far as where we put our efforts, at 1,600 units of multifamily get produced, that tends to be where the municipality is both going to put its efforts, and also it's the pressure we're getting from the provincial government is on that multifamily side largely as well. And so the challenge is, trying to find, if you can come up with good BC examples of where they've done it in a way that both achieves moving away from a car-centric neighborhood to something that attracts transit-oriented development, with maybe a small lot infill discussion that we've had in the past. We call them SLIAs, and they're in order to be able to get enough of those to take place in a neighborhood in order for it to actually be able to affect the services that go into it. So any type of advice you can give on that would be appreciated, but there is a tension between the long-term renters and stratify owners, because it will make it very hard to produce long-term rental units if you allow dual estate or stratification of those spaces.
I think so I'm going to say yes and to both of your points. So the yes and to the question related to maybe first of all the strata titling piece. This is not saying no rental. It's rather saying add the option to strata title as well. Not everyone's going to uptake that. And as we know from, you might recall in the presentation, the evidence around strata titling is that even when they are strata titled, a third of them will stay in the rental market. So it is not entirely pulling them out. What you do end up is with a much wider array of options, both for renters as well as owners. That starter home opportunity coming back to this District of North Vancouver. And the yes and for the density piece, you're right that most of the focus, and you can get the bigger bang for the buck in terms of the multi-unit residential, the towers that you're building around Lynn Valley Center, for instance. However, when you actually compare that to gentle density initiatives, you can actually get the housing faster with less conflict from the community at a lower cost and investment from the city, and still actually generate some of the address some of the land use issues that you're talking about. When you do most of those intact communities are 20-year initiatives. What you're getting at with a widespread gentle density initiative is you're catalyzing homeowner developers to introduce housing to the market, leading to in the cases where this has been very successful, Vancouver being an example, 10,000 units being developed by homeowners themselves. So this, I think the answer is both are important, but one is actually more cost effective, less, conflict. It doesn't create as much conflict with the community members.
I just have to say one thing though. Vancouver does run under a charter, different legislation that we run under, so it is different. And the region has been planning for decades now for densification within town centers, and they have not been planning the infrastructure and utility needs that the province has already all of a sudden come up with. So it's sort of throwing the entire system into a bit of a flux.
Thank you very much for your presentation. You've been very responsive to our questions and comments, and I do appreciate it. Council, we've had the delegation, we've moved receipt and seconded. I'll call the question. All in favor? Contrary minded, the motion carries. Thank you so much for your presentation here today. Okay, moving on to the section 8, reports from council or staff. We have item 8.1. This is the East 29th Street parking pockets. And we have some comments from staff.
Your worship, Mr. Cohen has some opening comments to introduce the staff report.
Yeah, good evening, Mayor and Council. Tonight's staff report is in response to the workshop we had with Council on February 6th of this year relating to the East 29th bike lanes. The workshops centered around a concept to retain the existing bike lanes and install parking pockets along East 29th between William and Frome. This parking pocket concept was staff's proposal in balancing the broader needs to retain the bike lanes for a continuous cycling network, along with local resident concerns of wanting more opportunities for delivery and short-term parking access on East 29th. We understand from the workshop that Council showed an interest of this parking pocket concept and for it to be applied on both sides of East 29th, and asked staff to report back to a regular council session for formal consideration and endorsement, which is this evening's report before you. In the interest of time, I'll leave it there and can now hand back to council for your deliberations, and staff are available for questions.
Thank you very much, Mr. Cohen. Okay, members of council looking for your comment and action. Councillor Hanson.
I'll move the staff recommendation.
Okay, is there a seconder for the staff recommendation? I don't see a seconder for the staff recommendation. Oh, Councillor Forbes. Okay, Councillor Hanson, your comments?
Yeah, thank you very much. And thank you to the staff for this report, which does follow out of our workshop. There's obviously a long history here with respect to bike lanes on East 29th. I am going to support this proposal. I believe it's a compromise. Different times we've talked about whether these bike lanes should be there. I've always voted in favor of the bike lanes as a step in the direction of a fully integrated bike lane system across the North Shore. I don't believe it's the right move at this stage to decommission the bike lanes, yet at the same time, we have a significant issue with respect to parking along East 29th. There is a cost to this, $150,000. I'm mindful of that, but at the same time, I believe that it says here,
150 for both.
it is estimated the construction of the parking part would cost approximately $150,000.
Each.
So I'm reading that to mean that's the cost of the proposal that's put forward by this report. It's compromised, as I say, it's not perfect. It perhaps has the potential to leave everyone unhappy, but I believe it to be a reasonable step in the circumstances, given the history where we're at. And I do note Mr. Cole's support, and thank you for that. And yeah, I'll leave it there. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Forbes, do you have additional comments?
Thank you, Worship. Just a couple. We are talking about roughly 7 to 9 pocket parking spaces.
Sorry?
Am I on? No.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Parking spaces, and they are going to be timed during the day hours from 8 a.m. to 6 p.m., 30-minute loading zones. So I think that allows some flexibility as far as not having one vehicle parked there for 24 hours. I think that when we re-looked at this, or when I re-looked at this, ideally, I would have liked if we could have done some kind of figuration where we kept both directions for the cycling lanes and had one side of the street for parking, which would have given more flexibility on the parking, but we just can't configure that, engineering tells us. So this is a compromise, like Councillor Hanson has said, it is a compromise. And one of the things that it was accessibility, things that brought to my attention the need for this kind of compromise was accessibility for people who need that in order to get in and out of their homes, people who don't have lanes behind their houses, or else in the wintertime they can't access that laneway because we don't pave that laneway. And also deliveries, and healthcare nurses. I talked to healthcare nurses that do home services for some of the people along there. So the accessibility and the availability for short-term parking, whether it's loading or short-term parking, I think is really important. We haven't lost the cycling lanes, which is a good thing. Although I'm not so sure that they're being as well used as we thought they were going to be. But in any case, it's a compromise and I'm in favor of voting for this. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next, I have Councillors Ma and Murray. Councillor Ma, your comments?
I remember this workshop. It was one of the first one as a newly elected councillor. So I remember the challenge that I had because there were issues on both sides. I support the advancement of mobility infrastructure, but at the same time, we need to work with the community to make sure what we put in place works. Seems like the key word tonight among my council colleagues is compromise. And, you know, I've given this some thought. I've talked to a few people in the cycling community, and I think this is a reasonable compromise. I want to thank the staff for coming forward with this report. And I will support the staff's recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillors Murray and Back. Councillor Murray, your comments?
How many spots are going to be 30 minutes?
Yeah, so through the mayor, roughly half of the spots would be at that time limit.
So how many, we say 2 to 3 and 5 to 6, so we have 8. So 4 will be 30 minutes?
4 to 5, yep.
Is it 4 or is it 5? Does it depend on the size of your car? Like, how do you get 4 to 5? It's either 4 spots or 5 spots.
Should council provide us direction in terms of proceeding with this through detailed design, we'll identify exactly it's just an approximation based on what we've identified so far.
And could I just clarify a comment Councillor Hanson made? Could did you say that if there was another alternative, Councillor Hanson? Oh, because there wasn't another alternative. You made mention of
Well,
that.
I'm sure there's various other
Yeah.
alternatives, but this represents
Something.
a compromise that, from my perspective, was arrived at in the discussions at the workshop.
Mhm. Yeah, I think there's going to be losers here again. Some, a front yard's going to get taken out, hedge is going to get taken out. I've spoken to some residents. How many people did we meet with in regards to this impact?
Through the mayor, as we shared at the workshop, staff will take direction from council and then start to engage with adjacent residents. So the outcome of this evening's decision will determine what the next steps are for staff.
So you haven't spoken to people about the impact of their properties yet? They know their hedge is going to come out?
Through the mayor, as we said at the workshop, we require council direction before we move forward with the next steps.
And then if they have big concerns in lobby council, then it comes back again.
Through the mayor, as we shared at the workshop, should council approve us to move forward with this project, we take that as the green light to go into construction. And then the discussions with neighbours would be solely focused around construction impacts and trying to mitigate them as best as we can.
Yeah, this has been one of the most debacled issues I have ever dealt with in 27 years. I have to say, it just irks me that we are having to deal with this. And I don't understand why a bike lane that has very little uptake on it is being so protected. I do not get it. We went out and did a fulsome process with this community, and then we did the exact opposite of what we said we were going to do. And then we went on to Lynn Valley Road and consulted with everybody and made it so people could park and still ride, and we won't do it on this street, and I don't get it. I do not get it at all, why we are doing this. And, I thought that as a municipality, we were supposed to, support our local residents and try to find solutions. And all we've done is try to find solutions on one street instead of finding another way to ride down 29th. We're not going to be able to plow these areas. I mean, we watch plows in bike lanes all winter. I think utilities or streets clocked 3 cyclists that they saw, and all we did was have the street plow pour the snow onto the bike lane and the bike lane pour the snow back onto the road. So we haven't solved that problem, and we're not going to plow a lane. Like, this is not solving a problem. We're constantly compared to the city of North Vancouver. And every time I go into the city of North Vancouver, I'm amazed at the flexibility that the city takes in regards to their cycling infrastructure. They've got sidewalks with a curb, with a bike lane, with a row of parking. And we refuse to do that. They've got multi-purpose paths. Some streets you ride, some way busier streets than 29th, you can ride in the city of North Vancouver with the traffic. We allow it on Dollarton. We allow share the road on Dollarton, but you cannot share a road on the width of 29th Street. Like, I don't get how we apply this concept and this logic. And now some people on the street want this because it helps them, but then other people are having to take a hit. And, we went to the community and we said, we want to put a bike lane on one side and leave parking on the other side. And now we don't want to own that as an engineering department or as a municipality. And I don't get it. It's so challenging for me. I have to say, it's a bit hypocritical how we can say that our plan was a bike lane on one side. And I know this was before your time, Mr. Cohen, but a bike lane on one side, parking on another. And council made a decision, but I don't understand why engineering is so dug in on retaining it, even though it was never their plan in the first place. That's what's so illogical about this whole thing.
Thank you, Councillor.
And I'm sorry to the people of 29th, all of you that have to deal with this. I think we have completely failed you.
Thank you, Councillor Murray. Councillor Back, your comments.
Thanks. I'm going to focus on the report from staff. I think the parking pockets are, as a user, I think they are a solution that can work quite well. And in fact, I think they are working well on Lynn Valley Road. I recall from the workshop that we had, I thought staff were going to give us two options, one parking pocket or two, rather than just two. I thought that's how the workshop had ended up. Although I do recognize that we were considering an estimated budget of 250,000, which is down to 150 without the precast concrete barriers that were being proposed at the workshop. So I'm curious to know if we were to do one parking pocket instead of two, what the estimated cost would be. In terms of the funding, I note that it's coming from the Growing Communities Fund from the province. My understanding is that funding was meant to be for parks and recreation, not street parking. But I understand there's fairly loose criteria as to how we could use that, but I'm not sure that that's what it was intended for. So all of this being said, I do think many of us here at this table, not all of us, want to see this resolved. We want to see people, residents, have some better access to their homes. I think any parking that's brought forward in a parking pocket scenario should be time limited, for sure, for the ease of those drop-offs and pickups and deliveries. Those are I think one of the biggest challenges right now. So, but I wonder if staff could comment on the options that I thought were coming out of the workshop, which were either one side or both.
So through the mayor, responding to Councillor Back's query. So in terms of the $150,000, that's broken down to $90,000 on the south side and $60,000 on the north side. So collectively it's $150. Should council choose to go to one side, that's the breakdown: $90,000 south side, $60,000 north side. Yeah, so just to reconfirm, if should council choose to only go on one side, it's $90,000 roughly for the south side, $60,000 for the north side.
And the cement barrier?
That is not part of our recommendation based on council's feedback from the workshop.
Mm-hmm. Councillor Beck.
And do we have a sense of what the street parking utilization was prior to the bike lanes being installed? Through your worship.
Through your worship. To respond to Councillor Back's question, I don't have the numbers in front of me. I recall it being in the order of 50%, but I would have to follow up with the precise number.
So I'm inclined to support the recommendation. However, if there is an appetite to look at reducing it to one parking pocket, I would like to have that as an amendment.
I think the way to handle that would be you'd have to propose one or the other, the south or the north, and see if it gets seconded, see if that gets supported, and then if not, then we'd continue with the motion that's on the floor. So that's your prerogative, though. So
yeah, I mean, I think when we talk about, and Councillor Murray made the comment that this is going to have an impact on people who live here, and we're going to see their front yard disappear, or at least most of it, with these parking pockets. So I think we should be looking to minimize that, and I think that would be a compromise. Is 5 or 6 spots, on one side rather than both sides.
Are you formulating that as a motion, as an amendment?
Yes.
Okay, so then the amendment would be that it would be the south side pocket and fully time limited, I think, if I'm divining from what you said. I think that's what you said. Is that fair?
I do want to see time limited, yes. And just getting the diagram open.
So your worship, this is moved and seconded on the floor. Excuse me. So the nature of the motion would be something to the effect that the main motion is amended by striking out either north or south.
I don't believe it has been seconded, but I'll second it.
Okay. that's-
By Counselor Hanson, seconded by Counselor
Oh,
Forbes.
sorry, you're talking about the original motion. We're talking about the
Yes.
amendments. So the
Okay.
amendment is.
I'll
is-
move
is
it.
that your, I just want to be clear that that I'm not putting words in your mouth here, that your amendment is that only the south side is
Side, which is the larger of the two,
the $90,000 project.
unlimited parking.
Okay, is that adequate information for you to formulate the motion, Mr.?
So that would be that the main motion is amended by striking out, I'm sorry, what you wanted the south side, so strike out north
Yes.
and just
That
think,
all parking units be time limited.
yeah, I think we'll have to put that as a second clause. And that parking spaces be time limited and that staff are directed.
Councillor Pope, did you indicate that you seconded that? Okay, and so now we're on to the amendment. So council, if you wish to comment on the amendment, I've received Councillor Back's comments. Councillor Pope is the seconder on the motion. Would you like to speak to the amendment?
So I support this amendment because it is a compromise. And I'm really, I'm actually really opposed to spending any taxpayers' money on parking pockets for one or two blocks, one block. I think most, if we were to take a poll of most of the district residents, would they rather spend the 150,000 on one block of parking, or would they rather spend it on a new skateboard park? That they would probably go with the skateboard park or many, many other types of amenities. So because this issue has been dragging on since 2016, previous councils, I feel very strongly that we must move along. I've said all along that we must provide accommodation for people who are facing serious hardship. And I think during our last meeting, it was determined that there actually was no one facing serious hardship, but rather it was providing an inconvenience to the residents in that block who have been very upset about it, a few of them. So I feel that in the spirit of compromise, I'd be prepared to vote in favor of the amendment. I'd still like to see the concrete barriers in. I don't quite get why they came out. Was it because of the costing? Is my question.
Yeah, so through the mayor, based on the outcomes of the workshop, staff were instructed not to include them based on the cost.
So do we know what the cost would be to have them in
So
on one side only?
through the mayor, when we presented back at the workshop, it was roughly $50,000
For one side?
for both sides. That's when we were considering both sides, roughly half that.
Worship.
If I
Mr.
could
Joyce?
add to that, I think I also added at that workshop that we would consider, based on whatever discussion council had tonight in the decision, and that we would look at that as part of the operating maintenance budget next year, 2024. So we get this issue behind us, put the parking pockets in. There has been some issues. We've learned a lot from Lynn Valley experience and the barriers that are there, both for our solid waste vehicles we had to talk about last in the workshop as well. So our staff will be prepared to revisit that as part of our operating maintenance budget next year.
Great, thanks for clarifying that. I feel better if it's going to be something we can look at next year.
Anybody else like to speak on the amendment? Councillor Murian?
Why can't we just look at a solution of putting a fully protected bike lane in on the north side and taking out the bike lane on the south side? Like, that is the solution to the problem. It's a fully protected bike lane uphill, which is where you need the protection, and take out the south side and allow the parking to go back in.
Can I press you to speak to the amendment?
Well, I'm not going to support the amendment because we need more parking, not less parking. And I don't agree with time limiting it at all, because we've got people that are going to, in the wintertime, we have no place to park in the lanes. They can't get into the lanes. So then we're going to time limit people going to visit family members to 30 minutes. You know, like, I do not understand. No one is the ridership on the street is declined, and yet we want to spend all of this money on something that really is very few people are utilizing. I get the uphill. I get you need to put a fully protected bike lane in uphill, and I agree with that. That's the hard part of riding on 29th. But we just watched bike riders ride down Queens, which is significantly less wide than 29th, and we're good. So I think that the questions were not answered. I think during the workshop, we also talked about alternative routes. And I see no evidence of alternative routes. We talked about the fact that TransLink was looking at 29th, but we're not really looking at that configuration. So why were we protecting this road so fiercely? Was it because of TransLink, or was it really that we want to keep a protected bike lane down 29th? So I have challenges with that. Plus, the city of North Vancouver has completed their process and received funding for their connection, which will divert cyclists off 29th, and they will use, what's the connection called?
The Kazana-Lettet
Connection. So they're not even going to be going down 29th. They're going to be riding down the Kazana-Lettet connection, which was going through a process with First Nations and has been funded. I confirmed that with Susie Chant's office. So there was a lot of information, council, you did not hear about. It was not presented during the workshop. And now we are going to put in infrastructure that is really useless when we realize that the configuration that the city is building is going to drive cycling traffic away from 29. Like, you know, I think we're making this decision on not complete information. And I think, I don't appreciate that we can't send this back, that it's not recommended. I'm sorry. I refuse to make decisions that makes no sense, especially void of information that would actually impact our decision. And I want to ask council if they knew about the Lutek connection, and I want to ask council if they knew about the TransLink issue. And I would suspect that they'll say no, because I didn't even know about it until I talked to the mayor. And I talked to Eli Mallon from Susie Chant's office, and he conferred that the connection to Lillitet would go, and that's where the majority of cycling traffic would travel. So I just think that this is a mistake, and I think that we should look at removing that lane off the south side of 29th, and we should look at what our neighbors are doing to improve cycling, and we should improve it by putting a protected bike lane on the north side.
Thank you. Just to be clear, we don't have a second speaking opportunity on amendments. So I'm going to add my comments, though. You know, from the very beginning, this has been a divisive affair. What happened on council was that we were 3-2-1 and 1 in terms of different opinions and different approaches to this issue. When it originally came forward, there was as Councillor Muri said, there was a proposal to do one lane. What happened was there was a council meeting where the decision was made to switch to 2 lanes. There wasn't any consultation with the community at that time. That's allowed. It's just obviously not the preferred way to do it. And it's caused us to be in this perpetual split of 3-2-1 and 1, I think, when I counted heads at the workshop. So the challenge I'm in now is that I actually share the view of Councillor Pope on this, that I wasn't a fan of us spending money on these parking spots. My preference would have been, although different than Councillor Pope's, would have been that we did not have the bike lane on the side of the road and we returned it back to the parking option that was there. That's not the situation we're in now, and I have to make my decision based on the situation we're in. And so I think that when we were talking about compromise, the compromise would have been just the 1 lane back in the day. But now that we're talking about in the context of where we are today, I think it's reasonable what has been proposed by Councillor Back, and I will be supportive of the amendment at this time. Okay, would anybody else like to speak on the amendment? Okay, hearing none, we're probably going to end up in the same situation, but I'm going to call the question anyway.
Perhaps, Your Worship, I should reset or restate the motion. Sorry, Councillor.
Can I ask a clarifying question around the time limited parking? Is that part of the motion?
It was part of the motion,
Yeah,
yeah.
I'm just wondering if it applied, if it can be 8 AM to 6 PM. I think that's what we've done on Lynn Valley Road.
Still with overnight, I'm assuming it's what's in the report, which is for the time limited spaces, there would be
Time limit.
overnight parking would be permitted in them.
I just want to confirm that. Thank you.
I'm assuming that's the same as the other spots that were listed in the report, but
That's why I think we'll go with
I'm
time limited. and-
nods from the right
Yes.
heads over here on that recognize.
So your worship, to restate the motion moved by Councillor Back, seconded by Councillor Pope, that the main motion be amended by striking out the words north and in the first clause, and Dory will take care of the plural references in there. And number two, inserting as a new second clause, the words and that parking in this pocket be time limited.
Okay.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, so the question would be appropriate on that amendment.
Councillor Forbes, would you like to speak to the amendment?
No, I wanted to ask a
Call the
clarification.
question.
That's speaking time. Go ahead.
We are talking about, Councillor Back's motion is talking about just parking pocket on one side of
On the
street.
south side, the one that was valued at $90,000 and that the spaces that are produced out of that would all be time limited. That's the amendment.
Okay, I realize we have to vote on this amendment, but if it fails, I do have some other comments.
Then it will return back to the original motion, which was moved and seconded. So at this point, you've already spoken on the amendment. So I'm going to call the question on the amendment. All those in favor of the amendment? Contrary minded? The amendment is defeated. So you're now back to the regular. Hold on a sec. So in the in order part is we would now move back to the original motion that was moved and seconded. Just want to be clear, were there other speakers waiting to speak when we had that discussion? Was Councillor Murray the next speaker to speak on the original motion?
Yes, your worship, we've returned.
Fantastic.
Yeah, you've got the speaking queue
Councillor
there.
Murray, you're speaking your second time on the original motion, and yes, you can propose an amendment if you so wish.
So I'd like to move that we return this back to staff for staff to present the full cycling route between the city and the district in Lynn Valley, so we can understand the full impact of cycling and the direction that cyclists will most likely take based on infrastructure that is going to be completed by the city of North Vancouver.
It's a referral motion back to staff. Is there a seconder for referring the item back to staff?
Are you going to second it there?
Councillor Forbes is seconding it.
So I think we.
Just your worship, could I just clarify? Certainly to refer the matter back to staff for a particular purpose to reconsider?
In order for council to understand the complete cycling infrastructure that will connect from the city of North Vancouver to the district of North Vancouver, so we actually understand. Okay, can I just say that?
Well, we need something a little briefer than that to reconsider the
So we
cycling
can
network.
understand the cycling infrastructure between the city and district of North Vancouver in Lynn Valley.
Thank you, your worship.
Okay. That's been
Sorry.
seconded by Councillor Forbes.
Thank you.
Okay, now discussion on that amendment, or sorry, that referral.
So council, I just think it is our responsibility to be able to actually understand what our neighbor is doing, because as we know, there's no borders between the city and the district of North Vancouver. Everybody shares the infrastructure, and that's what this plan was in the beginning. But Lutet Casano was not completed yet because there was consultation that needed to happen with First Nations. That consultation has completed, and we need to understand what the city of North Vancouver is designing in order to understand how it's going to come through our community. And it is going to divert cycling traffic in another direction. I think the mayor could also talk to us about TransLink and some of the suggestions that were brought up and thought of and are not going to be considered in the future. So I think I'm sorry, I get that this is 2 blocks, but we cannot do business like this. We cannot operate like this. We need to understand what our neighbors are doing because we are all sharing this infrastructure. And I think even when we started this project, there were challenges. So we need to go back and we need to make sure that we understand it completely, because we do not want to put a piece of infrastructure in and impact these residents and have no one actually use it.
Would anybody else like to speak to, sorry, Councillor Forbes, you were the seconder on the matter. Do you have further comments on the amendment, on the referral?
Can I ask for a couple things to be clarified? Because there was some information that I think I wasn't aware of.
Yes, you have 4 minutes, so go ahead.
My stance has always been that I don't think that the cycling lanes, unless absolutely necessary, should not be on arterial roads for safety and for health, not breathing in congestion on main arterial roads. Having said that, this doesn't, the upper 29th is not really being dealt with, and there were people there that had accessibility issues as well. And so, and it's not simply out of a convenience on the one block. It was for accessibility, it was for deliveries, it was for healthcare services. It wasn't just convenience of having a parking spot. But my two clarifications that I'd like to know about is the growing community fund staff. What is that supposed to be used for? And my other question is, how many yards are actually affected? We're talking here about ripping out people's yards, and I don't want the public to be horrified that something like that's going to happen. So how many actual yards would be affected?
Mr. Joyce, are you prepared to comment on that right now?
Your worship, while staff are looking for the number of yards, I think there was a gap here when council instructed staff through the workshop and we spoke to MLA Chant, there was money made available. She told us from the office that there would be funding for this. When we went back and checked and said council at the workshop were supportive of staff looking at the laybys and the parking areas, that's when the provincial government came up with the District Growing Communities Fund at that point. So that's when they announced that program. And they said infrastructure like this, not just this, but parks and other things were available for that.
So this is part of that 10 million?
Correct. So staff took the opportunity as part of this to earmark some funding for this. Should council adopt this, that would come out of the provincial Growing Communities Fund.
Thank you.
Comments on referral? Oh, yards?
Yeah, so through the mayor, just in terms of both sides, it's approximately 3 to 4 properties. On the south side, it's 4 properties that are impacted and 3 on the north side. Just for clarification though, just to make it really clear, this is within district right of way. So this is actually district property that we are dealing with and as it relates to permanent infrastructure. Correct. Through the mayor, it's just on district property. There might be some minor temporary pieces during construction, but as it relates to the permanent infrastructure, it's all on district property.
But it's district property that has been utilized over the years by residents. There's a retaining wall, there's a cedar hedge. So yes, it's on the boulevard, but we allow, if you look across the street, all of that garden across the street above that retaining wall is on boulevard. So we have to just make sure that we understand what Mr. Cohen is saying, that it is a yard that somebody's looked after for 40 years and now we're taking it out.
I think I need a clarification on that. Sorry, the land on the south side, is that District Boulevard or City Boulevard?
Sorry, district.
It's district to the private property line?
It is district. This section is district, yes.
And then as soon as you're onto the private property, you're into the city of North Vancouver, is that correct?
No.
Your worship, the municipal boundary between the city and the district is immediately west.
Your mic.
Sorry, through your worship, the municipal boundary between the city and the district is immediately west of Boundary Elementary, which is west of William. And so everything that we're talking about here is within DNV jurisdiction.
Okay.
There's no impact to private property. It's all within Boulevard.
Okay, thank you.
Just finish?
I believe, yeah, you had the floor, is that correct?
Yes. Never mind. I just want to say this has been dragging on, and I fought for the residents as well. And so I was under the understanding that we just couldn't engineer anything different on 29th. But if we can go back to what you had said, I think was the second iteration that we were all talking about, where one side is parking and one side cycling, then I think that's even more of a compromise. So I would even go more for that. Thank you.
Okay, we're at referral. We're having discussion on referral. Would anybody else like,
Oh, yes, sorry.
would anybody else like to discuss referring the matter back to staff? Okay, I'm prepared to, well, so I'll make my own comment on that, I guess. It appears as though the split still exists, which is going to make it very hard for us to give consensus and direction to our staff. I'm in part worried that I'm going to go into transportation tomorrow and half the staff aren't going to be there out of frustration on this one. This is just keeps coming back up. Again, as I said earlier, I thought that Councillor Back struck the right tone with a compromise, and so now I'm back to where I was, which is that I'm not supportive of the parking pockets. As I said in the workshop, as I said in the public meeting before that, I don't think that we should be committing this money to that purpose. Referring the matter back to staff, however, I don't think is going to help us answer this question. I think everybody came here prepared to answer this question tonight about whether they support parking pockets or not. And so I'm not going to be supportive of referring the matter back to staff at this time. I'd like to make a decision tonight. Even if I'm unhappy with the decision that gets made tonight, I think it's important for us to come to a decision tonight. So I will not be supporting this matter being referred to staff at this time. Would anybody else like to speak on referral? Okay, I'm prepared to call the question on referral. All those in favor of referral, referring it back to staff? Okay, all those opposed? Okay, the matter's opposed, so we're back to the original motion that was moved by Councillor Hanson. I can't recall the seconder on that.
Your worship, that was moved by Councillor Hanson, seconded by Councillor Forbes, and it's on the floor as printed in the
Thank you
agenda.
very much. Back to the original motion. Do we have the original speaking order in? I believe the last speaker we heard was Councillor Murray, who made a referral motion, so then it goes to Councillor Forbes. Councillors Forbes and Pope. Councillor Forbes, your comment on the original motion.
And this is 2 minutes.
Seeing as how I couldn't get the greater compromise, I'll go for a lesser compromise because I think the 29th residents deserve an answer and we need to move on. So I wish that we could satisfy everybody, but apparently we can't. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Pope on the original motion, please.
I would like to propose an amendment to the original motion.
Okay. What's the nature of the amendment?
The amendment is, can we please use the wording from Councillor Back's motion? Except I would like to delete the restricted parking time. So that means that we would have parking pockets on the south side only. And they would be restricted 2 of the 5 or some variation thereof would be restricted. The rest is parking at any time. Anything else?
Would it be within our, I'm just going to check with the clerk. Is it in order? I mean, we can keep doing this, but can I short circuit the process by asking the 4 people who voted against the last motion if that would change their vote? Or do I have to go through the process?
Can I just add that Councillor Forbes has already stated that she felt that that was a good compromise position. And that to me, by my vote count, is enough to make it the majority.
Checking with the clerk.
Your worship, I think we continue with formal amendments. We're halfway down that rabbit hole. We best can continue and finish this off with the formality.
Trying to make something work here so that it can be done.
I think
we all want the compromise.
No, I think I
We're not
understand the
happy
motion
with
as you
any of
formed
it.
it,
Thank
which
you.
is that it is largely the wording of Councillor Bax,
Yes.
except no commentary on the parking restriction, which I'm going to assume puts it back in the staff's hand to come up with some recommendation for that at a future time.
Your worship, could I clarify? I believe, I thought I first heard no restriction, but then I thought you said 2 of the 5, 2 or 3 of the 5 being
Well,
restricted.
I actually like the way the mayor has just
Okay,
worded
no
it. I think
restrictions.
that is the best
No,
way
no
of dealing with it.
commentary on
Yeah.
restrictions, that we just talk about the first portion, which is
North.
striking out the north and only proceeding with the south at this time.
Great, thank you.
Okay, that is substantively different than Councillor Back, so it's fair to introduce that as an amendment to it. Is there a seconder on that? Seconded by Councillor Back. So now we're talking about that amendment very specifically. Again, the way it works is, Councillor Pope, would you like to make any comments on the motion?
I don't think I have anything
Thank you very
additional
much.
to add. Thank
Councillor
you.
Back, any additional comments on the motion? Councillor Forbes, would you like to speak? To be
Can you
clear, the
repeat?
motion on the floor is that only the
On the
south side
south.
would proceed. That's the $90,000 project on the south side.
Time.
There's no commentary on time restriction, which means that it will be up to staff to determine a formula for what works in that space.
Okay.
Okay, okay, any other commentary on the amendment? Okay, I was supportive of the last one. I'll be supportive of this one. So
I'll restate it if
yes,
if we're at that point,
Yeah.
your worship. So that the main motion be amended by striking the words north and in the first clause.
Okay.
And like I say, we'll sort out the S's and the plurals to read south side only.
So this is the amendment?
this is the amendment. That's correct. And so well, it depends if it's amended or not. And so now would anybody else like to speak to the amendment? Hearing none, I'm going to call the question on the amendment. All those in favor? Contrary minded? Motion is carried. The main motion is now amended. We're back to discussing the main motion as amended. Any other discussion on the main motion as amended? Hearing none, I'm going to call the question on the matter. All those in favor? All those in favor? Opposed? The motion carries with councillors Mom, Uri, and Hanson opposed. How the sausage gets made. Sometimes it's a little bit of a messy affair. Apologies to people who are not used to municipal politics. It's probably enough to send you away from it for good. But that is how an in-order discussion on these kinds of controversial issues goes. What I'm going to recommend at this point, now that we've completed that, is that we take a little bit of a breather. My friend, the mayor of the city of North Vancouver, says sitting is the new smoking. So we need to get everybody to have a stand up and a stretch. The washrooms are across the hall. We're going to resume in about 3 minutes time with the meeting. Maybe, sorry, I'm going to go to 5 minutes time for the meeting. Catherine, can I steal you for a sec? I got to steal you for a sec.
It's on. We'll resume the meeting. I understand the mayor had to leave to go to attend his daughter's sweet 16th birthday party and pick her up to take her to that. So that's why he had to leave, and I'm here in his place. Never done this before, so please bear with me. The next item we have is 8.2. This is the Delbrook Avenue safety improvements. Do we have some information from staff on that?
Yeah, thank you, Acting Mayor Pope. So the staff report you have before you is in response to Councillor Back's motion for staff to report back on traffic calming options for the Delbrook corridor. As we've shared previously, prioritising Delbrook for traffic calming is challenging for staff for a number of reasons, of which two items primarily are, firstly, when comparing against dozens of other arterial and collector streets across the district, Delbrook does not rank near the top of the list and isn't identified as a high priority based on our road safety framework. And secondly, Delbrook is classified as an arterial road and therefore, per our current policy, is not eligible for traffic calming. But as you will see in the report, the staff recommendation before you is a rollout of speed reader boards for the Delbrook corridor to re-emphasize driving behaviours. And this could be the start of a program across many of our other arterial and collector streets. This recommendation before you was put forward as it allows us to do something on Delbrook as a currently lower priority road safety corridor, but does not majorly impact our other road safety initiatives and commitments based on staff and capacity constraints. I do want to acknowledge, though, that should council request staff to go beyond what is included in this report, the question then becomes around prioritisation of projects and what gets bumped from our list, as staff will be required to drop our road safety work on maybe another corridor, such as Mount Seymour Parkway, Mountain Highway, Riverside or Marine, of which many of these are already in the planning, design or consultation stages. And I thought this was important context to share. Again, I will leave it here in the interest of time and hand back to you for your deliberations with staff available for questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Do I have a motion on the floor?
I'll move receipt of the report.
Thank you, Councillor Murray. Do we have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Back. Councillor Murray.
Thank you, Acting Mayor Pope. So this is except for our biodiversity, Caroline. This agenda is all about engineering, traffic, parking, slowing down. And again, I'm going to go back to our neighbors in the city of North Vancouver. I don't understand how they use traffic calming down streets that are far busier than many of the ones that we're talking about today, and we can't. I don't understand. All the way down 15th, there's speed bumps. And like I would, you know, we need a 3-day workshop on this to talk about what's going on in our communities. You know, I'm bringing a motion forward later and about Deep Cove. We've been trying to fix that for as long as I've been as councillor, and it's getting worse, not better. Like, is it the policies that are driving? We need to go back and look at these policies. I would love to know the city of North Vancouver's policies on traffic calming. Because I just don't know why we're reluctant to get people to slow down from an engineering perspective. The reader boards, as you know, they go up, but people don't know they're driving that fast. I think half of them don't, and the other half do, but they don't care. And we don't have enough enforcement. In fact, we have less enforcement now than we did before. We're all challenged with full compliments as far as our employees, including the RCMP. And I just think this is a bigger issue than we're really giving it credit for. And you know, I think we talked about lowering the speed on some roads to 30, right? Councillor Back, it was 30, right? The slow streets process. There were challenges behind that as well, because not all streets in the district are the same. In the city, it's a grid. In the district, it's a windy little road that goes around like a snail all over the place, right? And it's not one size fits all. But I really think council needs to have a philosophical discussion, Mr. Stewart, on what kind of neighborhoods we want, what we expect, and how we're going to have to engineer these neighborhoods in order to make them safer. Because we're dealing with a lot more traffic. We're dealing with different kinds of cars that drive differently. And I think all of those things contribute to this discussion in the community where we need to slow things down. But we're doing it on a one-off. And I think we need to look at the entire municipality and understand where staff is coming from, understand where the existing policies are, why the city of North Vancouver can use different policies, but we can't. Because when I think of engineering departments, I just think you're all running off the same song sheet. You're engineers and you're running off warrants, right? You're running off a professional accreditation of standards that you have to follow. So why does the city of North Vancouver do this and we can't? This is the question we don't understand. As far as speed bumps down roads that are, what's 15th classified in the city? Is it an arterial?
No, the collector.
It's a collector. But from the volume of cars on that collector road, does that not surpass the volume of cars on Delbrook? And I think that's what we don't understand. I see that road busy all day long with buses going up and down it and huge amounts of traffic. And yet I see Delbrook and there's traffic, but I don't know if it even gets close to the level of volume on Delbrook. So I just think we need to have a big conversation about this to understand so we can assist our neighborhoods and make good decisions going forward.
Councillor Murray, I have Councillor Jordan Back seconded, and after that, Councillor Hanson.
Thank you, Acting Mayor Pope. I brought this motion forward and I want to thank staff for reporting back in the way that you have. I am disappointed. I really feel like council was asking for some solutions to be brought forward, and what we are hearing and seeing here is really the status quo. I would appreciate speed reader boards, and I know that residents along the Delbrook corridor will as well, but I think that will do very little to actually change the experience of anyone who's walking or cycling or traveling along that corridor by any other means than in their car. We need to look at re-engineering this whole corridor, and I recognize that it's not a priority and that we have a lot of other priorities based on different sets of data, but I'm encouraged by what Councillor Murray says. I think we could show leadership in this area and just start taking a stand and implementing some solutions that are going to slow traffic and make streets safer and more enjoyable for anyone and everyone. But that does require council to show that leadership and give staff direction. And I know staff get frustrated when they, hear one thing and then we might implement something and then, back up. And that ties into safe cycling facilities as well. So I think if we as a council can recognize that we need to show leadership, and I also think that the city of North Vancouver are a great example of that we could be looking towards and collaborating with them and learning from them, then let's do it. I think it so affects quality of life. And when you're in a neighborhood that does have slower streets and you can safely walk around with your kids, when you can talk to people on the sidewalk and not have to worry about cars going flying by you, it's just such a much more enjoyable experience and way of life. And I don't know why we make residents fight for this for years and years in some cases. So I really would support going back and prioritizing this corridor. And I think there is some engineering solutions. I see that staff are recommending a budget of up to $50,000. That seems quite high. I mean, I'm not saying that we need to spend $50,000. I think we know a lot of the solutions already that have been presented in the past that could be implemented. So, why don't we look at just, getting some more of those actions into a solution. But what I see here is not really a departure at all from the status quo. And I think that's not what council asked for when they supported my motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Back. Councillor Hanson.
Yeah, thank you very much, Acting Mayor Pope. My comments are very much along the lines of Councillor Back's. In our staff report, there's a sentence that says council direction is needed should they specifically require staff to refocus attention to the Delbrook corridor. I thought that was the exact substance of Councillor Back's motion, which was debated and supported by this body. And then the report goes on to emphasize that Delbrook currently ranks 9th according to speed over posted limits, and there's various data put forward. But I understood the whole point of Councillor Back's motion was to say, let's set that motion aside. We are relying upon a community feedback, an understanding of our community, a prioritization for the Delbrook corridor, which ranks higher than the staff had assessed, and that calls for a greater degree of intervention. I don't see, assuming that my recollection of Councillor Back's motion and our support for it is correct, and I think it is, I just don't see the kind of action items in this report that would be commensurate with the increase of prioritization. I mean, in terms of the various things that were done, they really, what's, as I read the report, what's talked about are these speed reader boards. And then there's a line that future work may also involve the development of road geometric concepts designed to mitigate observed speeding. Well, isn't that exactly what we had in mind? So from my point of view, this report does not answer the motion brought by Councillor Back. I would like to see more vigorous efforts to slow traffic on Delbrook, which I believe the community has very clearly set out as a high priority. And then frankly, I'd like to see a whole revamp of our speeding enforcement all across the district. Mount Seymour Parkway, I drive that every day. It's you take your life in your hands every time you get on the road. So those would be my comments. It seems to me a very tepid step in the direction of speeding enforcement in Delbrook and more broadly across the district. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Hanson. I have Councillor Ma up next, followed by Councillor Murray.
Thank you, Acting Mayor Pope. I don't have too much to add. I think my colleagues have made the key points. I will say that safer streets is an issue throughout the whole district. In the past month or so, Councillor Back and I have been meeting with some PACs and different schools trying to look at traffic calming around schools, especially during drop-offs and pickup periods. I would say that the staff have been creative in coming back with engineering solutions on other issues, and I hope they can do something here. I know in having some discussions with some of the residents, they see Delbrook, especially the lower part around the fields, to be quite wide, and traffic is quite fast at the end. I'm concerned about all the kids that do the sports down there, and I'm just wondering if there's, I forget the term, narrowing that portion of the street just to find an engineered solution to try to cause traffic to slow down a bit. Maybe that's a median or wider sidewalks. I'm not sure. I'll defer to the staff, but I'm looking forward to them coming back with something else. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Ma. Councillor Murray.
I'm here.
Seems to have,
No, I'm here.
there you are.
Yeah,
Okay. She's back.
We had a presentation about sidewalks and priorities pedestrian workshop. When was that workshop, Mr. Cohen, that we had? That was like 6 weeks ago. We had that workshop.
So through the acting mayor, that's correct.
Yeah.
Mid-May.
Right. And so we had that workshop and that presentation came forward, and then there was some sort of, it was split into 3 different sections. And then at the last slide, it said, so are we good with sort of these priorities? And, after 2 hours of talking about it, we're sort of like, oh, okay. Mr. Stewart, we have to expand those conversations. Because I think what may be staff's priorities aren't council's priorities. And I think that's the piece that we've missed. we need to look at our priorities together. I will say you're three skilled engineers, and we're lucky to have you. And please don't go, because we have to look at stuff like this. We, you are all, very talented, and we trust your expertise. I think part of the problem, though, is that we don't understand. I don't understand. I'll speak for myself. I do not understand how we are prioritizing within the municipality against what is changing in the community and what we're hearing in the community as which is what a priority is. And I think that's where we're on two different planes. And we need to be able to have that conversation. We need to be able to come forward and talk about what we're hearing from the people that, put us in this place, and try to work through that. And I think we also need to understand how you as engineers prioritize this work, because to us, the Parkway is a priority, Deep Cove is a priority, Delbrook is a priority, Edgemont is a priority. And I know there's a whole bunch of other ones that sit there with limited funds and limited resources. We need to have a bigger discussion about that as well. And I think that's where sometimes these things fall sideways.
Thank you, Councillor Murray. I have Mr. Stewart on standby.
Here we go. Your worship, what I'm hearing is this probably doesn't go far enough, but it's again another one-off, that council's somewhat frustrated that we're not having that philosophical discussion, because there's a perception that there's a disconnect between the engineering approach and the community and the council approach. So I would just suggest a follow-up motion asking for a workshop to discuss the philosophy, the differences in the philosophy, understand better the differences in the policies that we have and the city has, and just get a better understanding of where this council wants to go with respect to traffic management.
I'll move that.
Was that an amendment?
It's
a follow-up motion.
Your worship, if I may, it's out of order because there's a motion to receive on the floor. Once the report's been received, that motion would be in order. And to clarify the wording for when that comes on the floor is that a workshop be scheduled on transportation issues.
Yes.
All right. I'd also like to hear from Mr. Joyce.
Through your worship, I'll just remind council about that workshop. And I know the council motion out to is to talk about the traffic calming policy. But what I spoke about was your engineering team here will give you, as will other engineers, the prioritization for the routes based on statistics and numbers and speeds and the like. But more than any other avenue within the engineering camp, the transportation planning and operations can also involve the human element of what people perceive and what the community wants. And that's where the transportation traffic calming policy comes in. So the first stop would be to table that, which does say that we don't do traffic calming arterial roads. So we should look at that and review that with council. It has been 5, 6, 7 years since we last looked at that. But so what you've got in front is the prioritization from an engineering point of view as we deal today. And there are higher routes of work that we work on, the Parkway and Mountain Highway and others based on engineering standards. When you involve public view and community input, that may change in council's view. And that's what the traffic calming policy looks like. So we would start in the fall, and I think we came to that agreement at the last workshop. We bring that back, table that, and have that discussion with council.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Joyce. I have a few comments on it. I really found this report quite baffling as well, in that I also was expecting that the motion that Councillor Back had originally proposed was to come back with some engineering solutions to the Delbrook situation and speeding. And I feel like what I'm hearing from this group is that actually we should move forward on some of that, and that's what we need to have before us initially. And as far as and I also would just like to add that I think that, we were very quick to move in Edgemont and say, well, Edgemont should be, 30K, and that all went through, and we didn't need $50,000 worth of studies to do it. So I'm not quite understanding why we need that here when it clearly is a problem. I think we need to have a bigger discussion about how we define these things and what should be a priority, as all other councillors have suggested. But I don't feel we need to have another workshop on it. Aside from that, on the Delbrook issue, I think we could have a bigger picture discussion on all the other, the way that we manage traffic safety. So I would like to, are there any other comments on this particular? Sorry, Councillor Forbes.
Thank you, Acting Councillor Pope. Oh yeah, acting. I need to go home tonight. I just wanted to ask, I was shocked. This is kind of a personal thing, but I was shocked to see that Kirkstone Road is actually listed on here because, and I don't know if it applies to any of these engineers. I'm not saying it does, but there was a study that was done, a community study of boundary in Kirkstone Road for traffic calming management. There were 4 things that were supposed to be done on Kirkstone. Nothing except one happened about 3 years ago. So I'm not sure. I think maybe it's partially what you said, Mr. Stewart, is maybe our ideas and engineering's ideas are different, but there was an actual study paid for by taxpayers for that, and yet none of it's gone into place. Everything that was for Boundary Road has gone in place. Kirkstone's been left off. Now, and I know there's a difference between people wondering if they're on an arterial or a collector, and I know that's a problem. So I'm in agreement that I think we need a workshop to discuss those kinds of things and make sure we're on the same page and clarification. As far as Delbrook goes, I thought the motion was going to go forward too. And I know when I come down Delbrook, I've always got somebody right on my back end because I'm doing 50 and they're not. And I don't know if it's because it's such a wide road, somehow people feel safer speeding when they perceive they have more room than when they're squished in. But then I look at Mount Seymour Parkway and you're right, Councillor Hanson, that you take your life in your hands on Mount Seymour Parkway. So, those are my only comments, and I think the workshop should be restricted to talking to engineers, to council, and making sure we're both on the same page going forward in the future and defining things like arterial and collector to people who don't understand that already.
All right. Thank you, Councillor Forbes. So we're back to the options, which I may need some clarification on. Oh, I'm so sorry, Councillor Hanson, you wanted to speak a second time?
Yeah, thank you very much. I mean, I'm concerned that we're passing through this process without returning to the Delbrook safety issue and determining what our next steps would be. So in order to signal my opposition to the reader board program as the solution to the motion brought by Councillor Back that was supported by this body, I'm going to be voting against the motion to receive. I'd like to see another report from Delbrook or concerning Delbrook.
Okay, so does that take us, does that mean that you are in favor, just to clarify, that council refer back to staff for another report?
No, actually,
No.
that was not the intention of the follow-up motion.
Oh, okay, sorry.
So there's a motion.
Oh, so your worship, if I may advise, there is a motion on the floor to receive. Councillor Hanson has just simply indicated he's going to oppose that motion when the question's called. And I believe, subject to you confirming, I believe everybody has spoken on the motion to receive. So if you'd like to call a question on that, we can dispense with that, and then I can reiterate the proposed motion from Councillor Miri.
I believe I have Councillor Back wanting to speak for a second time.
Thank you, Acting Mayor Pope. I want to thank Councillor Hanson for raising the point. I think by sending this back to a workshop, it does kind of put this back in amongst every other issue around traffic safety and traffic calming. And I do want to see this report come back as well. So I think I did second this receive for information motion, but I will be voting against that as well.
Okay. Thank you, Councillor Back. So now we're back to the amendment. Or, no, sorry, I'm getting the wording confused here.
Yes, your worship. Now it appears everybody has spoken to the motion to receive. So perhaps calling the question on motion to receive would be appropriate. And then I believe there will be a follow-up motion.
Okay, I call a question on the motion to receive this information. All in favor? Opposed? It's defeated.
Okay, so we'll have a follow-up motion. I can move another one. So we'll have staff report back on alternative options for Delbrook. And, okay, and that we conduct a workshop to talk about the larger issues of transportation in the District of North Vancouver and traffic in the District of North Vancouver.
Okay, I believe we have a motion on the floor, which, have you got the wording on that?
Just working on that, your worship. I believe it was seconded by Councillor Hanson.
Yeah.
I think I heard. And that is that staff report back on alternative options for Delbrook and that a workshop be held on exactly what?
Traffic and
Transportation and traffic safety.
there you go.
Yes, thank you. Transportation and traffic safety.
And we're on item 2
Want to
at
just
9:30.
repeat that once you're ready to go with it? And
Call the question.
Okay, your worship, to restate,
did you want to?
I'll just restate that for the record, and then yes, it's on the floor for
Yeah,
debate.
we already.
Moved by Councillor Mary, seconded by Councillor Hanson, that staff report back on alternative options for Delbrook Road and a workshop be held on transportation and traffic safety issues.
I knew we did here.
That sounds fair to me.
That's on the floor
So that
for
motion is now on the
discussion.
floor. And we have a seconder by Councillor Hanson. Councillor Ma, please. Sorry.
Yeah,
Yes.
the mover and the seconder will speak first. At least all
The
three.
mover and the seconder speaks first.
I'm good, thank you.
Councillor Hanson.
I don't have anything to say.
Thank you. All right, we are to you again, Councillor Ma. Thank you for your patience.
Thank you, Acting Mayor Pope. Can I just get clarification? I know that my colleagues, Councillor Hanson and Councillor Back, mentioned this. Are we going to have to workshop first before the staff come back with recommendations so they can have some guidance? Or are we going to have them come back with a recommendation before the workshop? Like, I'm just trying to understand that sequence.
I guess it depends on the calendar and the agenda.
Worship, I think the one on transportation and traffic safety is a bigger one, especially if we want to start to look at comparing policies, for example, and comparing approaches. So I would suggest that you could probably get a quicker win just by focusing on the Delbrook first and then come back to the larger issue.
May I ask a follow-up question? How do we ensure that the recommendation for Delbrook as a one-off is consistent with the bigger vision?
My suggestion would be that you would probably take an incremental approach. You may identify additional options that would be supported by council. And then you might find as a result of the workshop, you add more items to Delbrook and specifically and to other areas. So I think that would allow you to move Delbrook along further than just reader boards, and then make sure that we have an opportunity to discuss all of the priorities within the context of the broader issues.
Yeah, undoubtedly, some of the decisions made surrounding Delbrook will help us with the planning, with the transportation and safety.
Question?
Question on the motion.
Just double check if anybody else wants to.
Anyone else want to speak? Looks like we're all good. So I'll call a question on the motion. All in favor? Opposed? I'm sorry for laughing. Herman, thank you. So the motion passes.
Yeah. It does, your worship, and we're done with that item. We'll move on to 8.3.
We'll move on to 8.3, Nature and Biodiversity Strategy Terms of Reference. Do we have a report from staff on this?
Yeah.
Looks like we do.
Hello, I just wanted to introduce to members of council, Matt McKinnon, who is our new Biodiversity Projects and Policy Manager. Matt has just a few short slides for you this evening. And just a couple quick comments. Many people choose, I think, to live in the district because of the close proximity to nature. And the district really has been a leader over the years in terms of fostering environmental stewardship. If you take a moment to look at attachment 2 of the report, there's quite an impressive list of initiatives over the last few decades. And staff have prepared the attached terms of reference for the development of biodiversity strategy. And I'm going to turn it over to Mr. McKinnon to just share a few slides with the council. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Acting Mayor. Good evening, members of council. I have a brief presentation on the proposed.
Matt, you can push that monitor back a little bit.
Push it back towards us. Oh, yeah, thank you. Thank you. Just a brief presentation on the nature and biodiversity strategy. The district is taking action in 6 key areas to reduce emissions, enhance environmental health, and improve our resilience to climate change. The proposed nature and biodiversity strategy presented tonight falls into the action area of healthy ecosystems. Biodiversity is the variation of life on Earth. It includes animals, plants, microorganisms, even bacteria that make up our natural world. Nature and biodiversity give us livable climate, breathable air, and drinkable water. It also provides us with climate change benefits, including storing carbon, cooling our district streets and boulevards, cleaning stormwater, and moderating floods. The district has a long history of leadership in environmental stewardship. For example, the Lynn Canyon Ecology Center has been presenting educational programs for children, connecting them with nature for over 50 years. The district in 1993 adopted an environmental protection bylaw, and that was one of the first of its kind in Canada. In terms of policy context, the district's official community plan identifies several key policies to protect and enhance biodiversity. As well, the climate change adaptation policy or strategy, provides direction on strengthening policies related to biodiversity. The nature and biodiversity strategy will help to recommend measures to mitigate biodiversity loss here at the local level on the North Shore. It will also identify supportive policies and actions to further protect and enhance biodiversity. Staff are proposing a 5-phase milestone process to the nature and biodiversity strategy. And this framework provides an actionable approach to conserving and promoting biodiversity in the district. I want to thank you for your time. And if you have any questions on the nature and biodiversity strategy, I'm happy to answer them.
Thank you very much, Mr. McKinnon. Where are we at now? So I don't actually.
So that's staff. I'll see if there's a motion on the floor and then we'll open for debate.
We have a recommendation that staff are directed to proceed with the development of nature and biodiversity strategy. Councillor Back moves, seconded by Councillor Murray. Councillor Back.
Thank you, Acting Mayor Pope. Just more of a comment, really. The district really is defined by our proximity to nature, and I think there's few things that people value more in this community than their connection to nature. It really is what our community is about, and I think as an organization, it's an area where we have, as Mr. McKinnon has said, shown real leadership over the course of many, many years. And in the last term of council, I think we made a lot of progress in this area as well. And I want to credit former Councillor Curran, who was really our champion in environment, I think, last term, and brought forward a lot of what's led to a lot of the actions that we're taking now. I am the district's, the council representative on the Climate Action Committee, and I've been to 2 meetings so far, and I just want to speak to how passionate and engaged everyone on that committee is. And it's a really talented group, and of course the staff that we have here at the district are some of the best as well. So this, I think, is the first sort of step in moving forward on a nature and biodiversity strategy, and I'm really supportive of it. I think it's going to encompass a lot of the other work that we're doing as well, things like our climate, energy, and emissions plan, and there's nothing more important than the environment as we look to the future. So just want to voice my support.
Thank you very much, Councillor Back. Councillor Murray.
Thank you. Thank you for your patience too this evening and excellent report and great presentation. So we have not seen an influx. We have not been in this place before that we're in with our natural surroundings and our community. Our forests are not looking like they once did. We have been plagued with our looper moth, climate, heat that is unrelenting in a forest made up primarily of hemlocks. And we've seen huge masses, amounts of water systems that have come in to the region that we can, that managing is very challenging. The other thing that we've seen a change in is the amount of people that are going into these natural areas of our community at exponential rates. Metro Vancouver saw nearly 1 million visitors, and the numbers just keep moving upwards. I think we're close to 2 million into our regional park system. And, I come from a place of wanting to make sure that those forests that we all love are sustained into the future. I think we can all agree on that. But we're going to have to make some hard calls with that because they are struggling. And we have to understand the impact that we as humans have on these areas and that it is our responsibility and that we have caused this impact and this degradation in these areas. I am so pleased to see this come forward. We absolutely need to do this. We should have done it, years ago. It's work that we absolutely need to do. I know we're going to be looking at our forest resiliency. That's going to be coming forward. That's going to be certainly tied into this. And what I would say, Mr. Stewart, just like transportation and engineering, all of these things within our natural environment, our park system, our alpine, how we build and develop, areas that we go into and the areas that we shouldn't go into. We need to understand that big picture. The big picture is what we really need to bring forward on all of these issues, because without knitting them and tying them all together, it makes it challenging for us to make good decisions going forward. We need to know, we've talked about what happens on the uplands, how it affects, everybody down below. And that's something that we really need to focus on. So I look forward to this terms of reference being created. I look forward to those workshops and tying all of this in, making sure it's all connected. Nature's connected, it works in a circle, and all of this stuff should be, we should be looking at it in the same way. So I look forward to an opportunity where we can have that bigger discussion, especially in regards to the forest. Councillor Hanson and I are working on a motion in regards to the urban canopy and what's happening there. And I would hope that staff will look at what Metro Vancouver is doing as well, and draw on Metro Vancouver's policies, so we don't need to reinvent the wheel. I think as well, council needs to understand reports put out by Vancouver Coastal Health and Metro in regards to the heat maps of the urban core and what's changing with development, and how those heat maps are, showing that we cannot sustain the level of temperature that's coming into our area, and how the built form plays into that. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Murray. Just before we go to Councillor Ma, I'm seeing that you're Mr. Joyce, were you wanting to address something?
Sorry, Your Worship, it looks like it was off from the last item.
Oh, no problem. Okay, thank you. On to you, Councillor Ma. Thank you.
Thank you. I just want to lend my support to my comments made by my council colleagues, and I'm fully supportive of this. I'm also very glad to see in terms of public input section, there's mention also about working with our First Nation partners. I think that's very critical, especially when we're dealing with nature and the environment. I think there's a lot of sharing and collaboration opportunities there. So I look forward to the report. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Ma. Do we have any other comments? I would just like to ask about the timeline for the strategy and when the strategy will be implemented and when it will be coming back to council.
Yeah, thank you through you, Acting Mayor Pope. Staff are hoping to or anticipate the final strategy or at least an interim report to council in the spring of 2024.
Okay, very good. Thank you. Thanks very much for your report. So we have a motion on the floor. Question? All in favor? Opposed? Seeing none, it's carried. Thank you very much. Thank you. Good luck with it. Okay, so moving on to 8.4.
I'll move it.
The traffic management plan for Deep Cove brought forward by Councillor Lisa Murray. Would you like to say a few words about that, Councillor Murray?
Thank you. Do you want
We need a seconder
Yeah.
at this moment?
Usually.
Councillor Hanson, seconds.
Thank you, Acting Mayor Pope. Thank you. So, this is another one of those, those issues that we've tried to address over the years with different scenarios. And just like our forests, we've had a lot of people come into these very idyllic parts of our community for years. We have the top 5 tourist attractions in the region: Capilano Suspension Bridge, Grouse Mountain, Quarry Rock and Deep Cove, Lynn Headwaters, Lynn Canyon, and we have a lot of people visiting them. But these places are also residential neighborhoods, and they're communities for people that live there. And as somebody that grew up in the Cove, my dad grew up in the Cove, my grandmother and grandfather came there in the 30s. Obviously, I've seen an enormous amount of change. And my goal in this is to try to find a balance. And I think the balance has been tipped in favor of not wanting to ever consider a level of restriction of volume into the area. We have for years talked about alternative ways of getting people down to Deep Cove, a shuttle system, the bus, ride a bike, and still we get an enormous amount of people coming in and driving, hoping to find that coveted parking spot where they can spend the morning or the afternoon or the entire day visiting Deep Cove. And, we talk about the environment, we talk about climate change, we talk about reducing greenhouse gas emissions, and yet traveling into the Cove, especially on a sunny weekend, doesn't matter if it's 20 below, there are still people on a sunny day lining up to get one of those coveted donuts and find that parking spot. And it just doesn't exist. The challenge for the local neighborhood is watching that stream of cars drive around and around and around the block, waiting to find a parking spot. I've often over the years used the West End and Horseshoe Bay as examples of what doesn't happen. If you go to Horseshoe Bay, you're not going to find a parking spot on the street because the vast majority of the parking spots on the street are either resident parking only or they are very time limited commercial spots. If you go into the West End, and they have a parking lot there, but they used to only have a surface lot. Now they have pay parking. Same in the West End. There are lots that exist in the West End, very limited parking, and the vast majority you need a permit to park on the street. So I am asking staff to come back with a comprehensive plan that finally balances out the needs for visitors to come into the Cove to support local business, but also giving the residential community an ability to visit those businesses again, because right now the local community is very apprehensive to go into the Cove, especially during the summer months or on sunny weekends. I do not want to limit our out of the box thinking. I want us to look around the region at solutions. And again, I bring up Metro Vancouver. They're piloting real-time apps. They're piloting reservation systems. They're piloting shuttle systems. They're piloting alternative forms of transportation. They're limiting parking in different areas. So I want us to think outside the box, use the plethora of options and alternatives that exist, and come forward with a plan that begins at the Parkway and goes into the Cove and looks at the Cove as a cohesive community and area, and bring it back to council for consideration. We are on the verge of opening up yet another attraction in Deep Cove, which is our plaza. That is going to be something that people will want to experience, and it will contribute to the issues that we are facing. It's time. I'll come back on my second time.
Thank you, Councillor Mary. Did you want to go next? Councillor
Yeah,
Hanson?
thank you very much. And I'd like to thank Councillor Murray for bringing the motion. First of all, I'm a frequent user of the Cove and have been for a great long time. I can testify very directly to what Councillor Murray is talking about. We've somehow ended up with a situation in the Cove, which is the worst of all worlds for all users, frankly. And it isn't a sustainable situation. We reached some kind of a tipping point, I would say, 5 years ago to pick a number. And at this stage, I do think we need to consider comprehensive solutions that'll provide a better balance and a fairer outcome for the residents, obviously, but also for the people that head in the direction of Deep Cove. I mean, you think of all of the congestion and CO2 emissions of people driving there when there isn't space for them. And obviously, I'm concerned about the residents whose way of life is being significantly trampled upon. I mean, I'm exposed to this every week, a couple times. Sometimes I'm often there at the very peak time of the weekend congestion, and I reflect on the fact that this is a knock-on effect of densification and population growth across the region. So we simply haven't, from my point of view, we haven't thought through how the region is going to be addressing these population demands and dynamics. And perhaps this puts us at the forefront if we put on our thinking caps, as Councillor Mary says, and think out of the box a little bit, come up with a comprehensive solution that balances the user groups. Perhaps we'll be leading the way for, while at the same time looking at precedents that have been set, but perhaps we can lead the way towards the solutions, because to just allow these sites across the whole metro region to become overburdened and unattractive to all the different categories of user groups, including the residents that are there already, without attempting to find some balanced solution that addresses the issues is not going to be satisfactory. So good luck to staff as they undertake this. What I think has the potential to be a very important, perhaps even groundbreaking report. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hanson. Do we have any other first-time speakers? Councillor Ma.
Thank you. I live in Permanent Heights, so this past weekend, I actually went down to Deep Cove twice just to see what it was like firsthand. And there are challenges, and I echo Councillor Murray's comment that once the pedestrian area is created, I think it's going to become even more of an attraction. Like, it's beautiful down there, but I can see, there's that need to strike that balance between residential area and attraction, because it is one of the most attractive sites in the district. So I look forward to the staff coming back with a plan. So I will support this motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Ma. My comments as a first-time speaker on this are that I'm wanting to ask some questions actually of Mr. Joyce. Like, for example, I'm curious to know what we've tried already and what kind of a timeline you have for reporting back with this really important information. I totally support it. I just also feel very strongly that we need to do something rather immediately because it's already become a gong show and we're not even officially into summer yet.
Yep, thank you for that question. Actually, we prepared something. I'll ask Peter to speak that to minute, what we have done or what is currently underway and what we are planning to do for the summer. So that would be both for the audience and for council to be aware of what we're doing. As far as the staff recommendation, or sorry, the recommendation from the council, I'm sure is going to be approved. We would report back in the fall on this. What Peter will now speak to is what we've got in place for this summer and what we're looking at. And there's some other tweaks that we would make. If I could, while I have the floor, I would concur with council. I think I've been warning council for several years. We're reaching the end of the engineering side of things here. We've sort of done what we can there. The demand now is always going to outstrip the supply in the Cove. And we'll be looking to this group to see where that, as Councillor Moss spoke about, where that balance is with both businesses, the locals, and people who live on the North Shore and the people coming to the North Shore. I mean, I think that the panacea, I think, is going to be in if we can get real-time data to people that are thinking of making that trip, that we're full in the Cove, or through either a reservation system in the lots that we own, something along those lines. But that's the stuff that'll come in the fall. But maybe Peter can give you a bit of an update of what we got in play and what we're planning for the summer months here.
Yes, just to add to Gavin, in terms of what we currently have in place, there's about 5 or 6 different things for the Cove. Just in summary, we do have traffic control personnel at the Cove trying to move traffic as best as they can. We do have parking time restrictions that have been implemented in 2 of the 3 parking lots. We are currently conducting a fairly comprehensive parking study of Deep Cove. We plan to have some of those results across the summer, so we plan to be reporting back to council shortly after the summer break in terms of that piece. We are working with the school district in some of their parking lots. We continue that dialogue with the school district to identify what opportunities there are for more weekends or more parking lots, and so we continue to work through them. We do have info signage out on site in terms of encouraging people, getting from the overflow parking lots to Deep Cove and
Right, we do have what?
Information signage as well,
Okay.
just to kind of encourage people with different modes of transportation and how to get around if you are parking in an overflow lot. And the last piece is that we also have a bus permit system in place, which is really just for non-profits. So tourism operators are not to come into the Cove. We know that sometimes that is not necessarily the case, but that's the intention of our bus permit. In terms of 3 quick additional things that we are looking and exploring actively for the summer of 2023. First, I just spoke about the school district. We're trying to find, working with them collaboratively, some additional weekends or some additional parking lots. The second piece is the Panorama parking lot. We are looking at some tweaks to improve circulation through that parking lot at Panorama. And the last piece there, we will be getting some of the initial feedback and outcomes from our parking study of Deep Cove. And so as staff, we want to see, are there any quick wins that we can actually go and implement this summer? That's going to be pretty rushed, so I can't guarantee it, but we want to see if there's any quick wins from some of that stuff. So that's just a little bit of an overview.
Sounds like lots of work in progress. One of my suggestions had also been to have some of that signage put right out by the exit from the Second Narrows Bridge and or Mount Seymour Parkway, or both, before people get into that stream that gets them out there. Is that?
Through your worship, we've actually done that in the past with the speed reader boards, that the Cove is full. We've highlighted that on the parkway before you get in. Mr. Cohen did mention, but we may look at, or I may look at with the park rangers as well, barricading if it gets really busy this summer and turning people around at the Strathcona area. But that would have to be a system we work out as between the rangers in the Cove or some other personnel that we would retain to just start turning people around so they're not circling down around in the Cove.
Okay, that sounds good. Thank you. So we're back to Councillor Murray
Thank
for
you.
a second time.
So just on that, thank you for the update, Mr. Cohen. I think that you've got to turn them away before they go to Strathcona. You got to turn them away at the Parkway. When they're coming down the Parkway, if it's full, they turn right onto Dollarton. If they're coming along Dollarton, they turn left up the Parkway. If you let them go to Strathcona, then they got to turn around. And that's either manning Sea Cove or getting them to drive around the block, which we're trying to avoid. So we have tried that in the past. It didn't work. We need to shut them down at the Parkway and Dollarton and Deep Cove Road. They have an option to go right or left. When we used to do Deep Cove days, we had flaggers with radios, right, on those on that busy community event day. So we all talk to each other. And I think we really need to use the rangers. We really need to use technology, and we need them to be able to, we have rangers on bikes, let them use electric bikes, be able to ride around the area, use equipment to be able to manage them. The signs in the Cove, yes, reader boards are helpful, but I think the other thing in the Cove, if you walk down there, there's 12 signs on the top part of Gallant. It's sign overload. Circulation at Gallant and Panorama Drive, and I stood down there for an hour a few weeks ago watching the flaggers, and it's best to have them, but it still needs a lot of work. It's that four-way stop that we implemented. We never used to have a four-way stop at that intersection. And it's people walking across and cars trying to turn and people trying to get home. And it's just, it's a disaster waiting to happen. The SD 44 lots, Mr. Stewart, Mr. Joyce, Mr. Cohen, we need to go. If we need to rent them from the school board, I don't know what we need to do to open them up earlier, but we need to get them opened earlier to be able to accommodate some of the traffic. And we do have to look at that real-time app system. I think we want to create a place where people just don't come if it's full. The reservation, it's being tested at Sassamat. The Hydro, BC Hydro has tested that. Metro Vancouver is looking at the reservation system. Mount Seymour put it in. They're not going to ever take it out because it works so perfectly. And we've had impact from Mount Seymour over the years, and it's just a good system. That would do it. So I truly look forward to the report, and we'll monitor what happens this summer. And thank you for your support, Council.
Thank you, Councillor Murray. And I have Councillor Forbes.
Thank you, Acting Mayor Pope. Got it right this time. Councillor Murray stole all my thunder. I think again, also at Mount Seymour Parkway, we should turn people away right there because that gives them an easy access to go get back out instead of trying to let them get farther in. So I'm all for we're full and turn them around, as Mr. Joyce mentioned. Also an app where people can, before they step out their door or where they're going to go, an app they can look at and tells them that we're full. That could be accomplished by the reservation system as well. And then to take a little bit of pressure off the engineers, I have, well, since the nice weather, April, I guess, I've been getting an awful lot of emails from Deep Cove people. And it's not just the engineering that's going to help. We need enforcement, just like we need all over the district, but we need enforcement, RCMP or whoever. I've been getting pictures sent to me where UPS parks in a handicap zone and runs across the street. I've been getting pictures of driveways that are blocked because people drive around, they get so infuriated they can't find a parking space, they just block somebody's driveway. So there needs to be somebody there. I don't know if and also there's also parking that's going on right beside fire hydrants. I get all kinds of pictures like that sent to me. So it's an enforcement action as well. So I don't know if that means we need to hire, you know, I don't know what the purview of the rangers are, how far they can go, but do we need to get the RCMP in there for a couple of weekends and see if that would make a difference? Because there's a lot of parking rules and road rules that are being broken all over the place, and it has nothing to do with the engineering. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Forbes. Does anyone else have a second time wanting to speak? Then we have the option, and I'll call the question on option 1, that the motion as presented is supported. All in favor? Opposed? It carries. Thank you. And so that now brings us to any council reports. Anyone want to? No, everyone's looking kind of tired. We're going a bit late tonight.
I'll be exceedingly quick if I can, Acting Mayor Pope. I do wish to acknowledge the great success of Blue Ridge Good Neighbor Days that occurred on June 11th, the first Good Neighbor Days since 2019. There's obviously a significant appetite in our community for public engagement, community engagement, and that was seen at that event on Sunday, June the 11th. Also, I wish to bring this body's attention to the fact that Lisa, Miri, and I on this Friday, June the 16th, drove to the Tsawwassen First Nation to attend the first ever community gathering, which was a meeting of all elected Indigenous council members across Metro. the members of the Metro's Indigenous Relations Committee and all directors of Metro. At least Councillor Mary attended as a director of Metro. I attended as a member of the Indigenous Relations Committee. Those of us in attendance, it was conducted in an authentic longhouse on the Tsawwassen First Nation. We regard it, without delving in any greater length because of the hour of the day, we did view it as an historic event and an important step towards reconciliation and communication between the different levels of government across Metro. Thank you very much.
Thank you for the report, Councillor Hanson. I enjoyed Blue Ridge Days. That was fun. Councillor Murray.
I just wanted to report, I just wrote down what I was going to report. I was just going to report, yes, thank you, Councillor Hanson. And I just wanted to let the community know that during the LMLGA, the Lower Mainland Regional Government Association meeting at Harrison, I was on behalf of the municipality awarded $1,500 on behalf of the District of North Vancouver to donate from Fortis to a local charity in the community. And I chose the Harvest Project. So that money is going to be going to the Harvest Project. They're rebuilding. And so I was happy to give the money over to them. And I had a zero waste committee last week. And I just want to bring this up to council, something that is just becoming a very big problem. I'm currently in the process of moving and I'm trying to downsize and I can't give away furniture. And it is becoming quite an issue in the region where we are throwing an enormous amount of clothes into the landfill. There is furniture going into the landfill. This huge consumption of goods that we are addicted to in this country is creating this very challenging place. And Metro Vancouver is concerned about it. And I think we should be as well. There is no place to store furniture. And if there was, we would be able to support those that have been in fires or floods or people that are trying to rebuild. But it is an issue that we need to really look at and discuss going forward to be part of the solution rather than the problem. So I bring that to your attention. Thank you, Acting Mayor Pope. You did a very good job. Well done.
Councillor Murray. Councillor Ma, have you got a report?
Yes, I do. Thank you very much. On Thursday, June the 8th, the mayor and I attended the Parkgate Society AGM. It was very well attended, very well organized, and just want to acknowledge that Adele Wilson, the longtime executive director, will be retiring soon. So congratulations to her on that. On Wednesday, June 21st, I will be an honorary librarian at Capilano Library as the council's representative on the library board. I want to encourage all the other members of council to volunteer to be a librarian for a couple hours. I think it'll be a great experience. And then finally, on the heels of Blue Ridge Good Neighbor Day, just want to remind everyone that on Saturday, June 24th, it's Lynn Valley Days. So hope to see everyone there. Thank you.
Right, thanks for that reminder. And the 23rd is the gala evening and then the 24th is the parade, correct? Yeah, great. Thanks, Councillor Ma. I think that wraps it up. So do I have a motion to adjourn? I'm so sorry. Councillor Forbes.
I've been having a rough night too. I just wanted to say that, again, Blue Ridge Community Good Neighbors Community Day was excellent. I go to that whenever we could. We couldn't during COVID, but good turnout. Kids love it. It was just great. And it was great hot weather. And the other thing I attended was I think all of the counselors were there. I think council on council meeting on Saturday. And I think our whole council was, except for the mayor. Yeah, except for the mayor, all the counselors were there. So
we made note of that.
So he's going to pay.
Thanks for reminding me of that. And Councillor Bach.
Thank you very much, Acting Mayor Pope. I just wanted to report, actually, I did my honorary librarian shift last Tuesday, so that was great to help kick off the summer reading club. That's always a big event and great to see all the kids coming in and picking up their reading passports. I had a Climate Action Advisory Committee last Wednesday. We had a presentation on the district's electric vehicle strategy, which we're in the early phase of, and it was a great presentation around the role that municipalities play in EV adoption and how we can build out different ways that we can build out the charging infrastructure in the community. And then, of course, yeah, Lynn Valley Day. Herman took my update there as well, but we'll see you on Saturday. I'm actually playing some live music on the community stage at 2 p.m. So come on by and make your request. If it's one of the 20 songs I know, I'll play it.
Mark your calendars, 2 p.m. this Saturday, Lynn Valley Days, to hear Jordan sing. Thank you.
Bring your lighter.
Do I have a move to adjourn? Thank you. Seconded. This meeting is adjourned.